Hello and welcome to the SRO Esports GT Series. We're here for the third round of this championship at the Nürburgring. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jack Nichols and we've got two one-hour races to bring you. First up, we've got a race for the professional racing drivers that you'll see on track in the GT World Challenge powered by AWS later this year. And we've then got a race for the silver drivers, which are some of the top sim racers out there. And that's going to be an incredibly competitive race as well. But we'll start off with the professionals. We've got Luigi Lorenzo leading that championship, but he's only 2 points in front of Jordan Pepper and Lorenzo Marcucci, only 3 points ahead of Ivan Pereira. So it's incredibly tight there. Qualifying has taken place already. We'll bring you up to speed with all of that later on. We'll be checking in with John Watson, Ben Constanduris and David Addison. But first of all, a new initiative from David Perrell, one of the professional racing drivers that we'll be seeing out on the real world circuit. He is developing a school to teach drivers how to get quicker in the real world and in the simulated world. Let's take a look. So the Coach Dave Academy, which last week had Jean-Eric Verne competing with it, the two-time Formula E champion and Formula One driver. So let's turn our attention then to the race that we've got coming up today. Joining me is David Addison. David, great to have you with us as we look forward to this first pro race. Luigi Di Lorenzo, top of the championship, as I mentioned, but he, Jordan Pepper, Lorenzo Marcucci and Ivan Pereiras, all separated by just 3 points, which is really, really close at the third round of the series.
And now we're getting to the point, Jack, aren't we, where this is all getting very serious indeed. As you say, it's a narrow margin at the very top of the championship table. And when you throw in the extra success weights, it means that Marcucci, who was so good at Spa, falls back on the grid here. And Jordan Pepper, second equal in the championship, winner at Silverstone, he's going to start on pole position here. So he's in the box seat, really, to try to, if you like, make amends for the dramas he had at Spa when the extra weight meant he was mired in midfield. He, from the front, should be able to get away here and start to rack up more points, and that's good for the championship.
Yeah, the race here at the Nürburgring this weekend, and like with Spa and Silverstone and Monza previously, they're racetracks that are really iconic and synonymous with the GT World Challenge, aren't they? And I've really enjoyed, in all the practice and the testing that we've been watching, seeing Nürburgring brought to life quite so vividly.
And of course, as we've also said in previous rounds of the championship, the partnership between Assetto Corsa Competizione and SRO means that you've got real-world balance of performance data. So the car to beat here last year in the first sprint race that we had in the GT World Challenge Europe was the Lamborghini. In the second race, it was the Aston Martin. Can we anticipate seeing those cars up near the pointy end of the grid? Well, on the evidence of qualifying, actually, no. Bentley looking very strong. Also, Porsche looking good. And so too, McLaren. So it's going to be a fascinating showdown for 1 hour, certainly for the pros, to see exactly which brand, and we've got 10 of them on the grid, comes out on top.
Well, as you say, it's Bentley who have taken pole position. Let's take a look at the Fanatec track guide of this Nürburgring circuit with Bentley's Mike Nobel.
Hello everyone, my name is Mike Noble. I race for Bentley Motorsports in the SRO Esports Silver Series. I will now show you a lap of Nürburgring GP with the Bentley Continental GT3. Enjoy! Hello, welcome to my lap on the Nürburgring. This track has a lot of technical parts, especially the arena section, which is the first sector. Coming into the first corner, brake just before the 100 meter board. Hard on the brakes, followed by trail braking into T1. You can use the inside curb to quickly turn the car. Stay close to the middle of the track before you turn in. Stay in gear 3. Use the inside curb to rotate the car more. Be careful with power oversteer. Go wide on exit, try to be as smooth as you can. Use the left side curb to rotate the car. Use gear 2, take a lot of the curb here. Be careful on power. Stay within the white line, getting a track pad warning happens easily here. Move as far to the right side as you can before the next corner. Brake on the curb, shift back to gear 3. Don't go too wide, you will compromise the entry in the next corner. Shift back to gear 2, rotate the car on brakes. Just off the apex, apply as much power as you can. Now, stay as much to the left side as possible. Brake when you're halfway on the first curb on the left side. Dive deep into the corner, go slightly wide and double apex it. Get on power as soon as you can. Use the right side curb to rotate the car on entry into Schumacher S. Stay in gear 4 and play with the throttle to get desired rotation and grip. Move towards the right side. Use the green astroturf on braking. Be careful, it's more slippery. Back to gear 3 and use the inside curb. Now, turn in and try to do a late apex. This will gain you more speed on the following straight. Now, try to take a smooth line here. You don't want to scrub off speed. For the chicane, you want to brake at around 75 meters, between 100 and 50 meter board. Stay in gear 4. Do not hit the high sausage curb on the left-hander. For the final corner, shift down to gear 3. Stay as close to the inside as you can. Get on power, but be careful with power oversteer. This was my lap at Nürburgring. I hope you enjoyed it.
So there's a look at the Nürburgring circuit, the Fanatec track guide with Mike Nobel and Bentley, and it is the Bentley of Jordan Pepper that will be starting on pole position. Five-time Formula One Grand Prix winner John Watson is with us as ever. Watty, the Nürburgring, talk to me.
Shadow of its former self, one might say. I've just been reading a book about Dick Seaman, a great British driver pre-war. He raced on the old Nordschleife, but this is the circuit that was introduced back in the 1984. There was a celebrity race. I took part in it in a Mercedes 190, 2.3 16 valve. We've moved on a bit, so we're here watching state-of-the-art GT3 cars. Some cars, this is the number 9 Andy Soucek, now Bentley running without that very punitive ballast that they had at Spa. Likewise, McLaren, they're back at the races because they've had the ballast removed as well. And Audi, they've got a 42 kilogram ballast to have to carry. Now, Marcucci, we've just seen on screen, has done a pretty impressive job, in my view, 7th quickest in qualifying. Further back in the Aston Martin, Luigi Di Lorenzo, they're also penalized, sorry, not penalized, wrong word, carrying an additional, it's a bit like Ben's handbag, another 10 kilograms in it. Goodness knows what he's got in it. Anyway, the Aston Martin down in 14th place. Di Lorenzo and Marcucci have done strong jobs, and I expect they'll come through the field, maybe towards the back end of this 1 hour race.
So you raced in the last F1 race at the Nürburgring and the first ever race at the new Nürburgring.
I did, and I have to say, and this is not a secret, but I'll remind people of it. In 1977, my team boss, certain Bernard Charles, sent me and at that time Niki Lauda, who had just recovered from that appalling accident, to the Nürburgring to do a track inspection with a view to possibly continuing or not. Coincidentally, I think there had been a deal already constructed wherein Hockenheim was going to take over the role of the German Grand Prix. So we went there, and surprisingly, we thought maybe the standards of the length of the circuit weren't appropriate for modern Formula One any longer. And what happened? We ended up racing at Hockenheim for many years.
Okay, well, there we go. We've got you to thank for Hockenheim, a great circuit. So
yeah, love it, guys, love it. I tell you what, in the springtime, best asparagus in the world.
Okay, I was not aware of that, I have to say. David Watty makes some interesting points there about, well, a lot of interesting points, mainly about asparagus, but also about the ballast and the penalties that we've been seeing. He singles out Marcucci then, starting 7th on the grid, Lorenzo Marcucci, 3rd in the championship, and it's about dealing with this series, appears to be, about dealing with your bad days and sort of damage limitation, a lot of it.
Absolutely right, Jack, because the way the championship operates is that the brand carries extra weight for being in the top 3. Not just the driver, but everybody in that car. Now, at the pro race at Spa, we had an Audi 1-2. So therefore, the Audi carries weight for the win and weight for second place, and that is then on every Audi. So it was a really good day at Spa. The knock-on effect is that you are all larded up for this race here. So in a sense, you want to keep finishing 4th and banking the points rather than yo-yoing. You have a good day, carry weight, then a bad day, get rid of the weight, have a good day, get the weight, go back down again. So those that are able to stay on the fringes of the top 3, perhaps be the first driver home for their brand, but avoid the weight, are doing a good, solid job of racking up the points, and that's going to help for the championship. But Audi carries 42 into this race. All the Aston Martins carry an extra 10 kilos. Therefore, the Bentleys, as we've been saying, McLaren likewise, and Porsche, they are all success ballast free. This could be their day in the sun.
Yeah, and that was Jordan Pepper's qualifying lap that stuck him on pole position. And I have to say, Watty, that looked like a very nice lap that we just watched. And he had quite a bit of traffic to deal with as well, because it's a huge grid, this, and that's always difficult in qualifying. Some games and simulations, they have sort of a private qualifying session where the track is their own. But Pepper really had a lot of cars to get around on that lap.
Yeah, no, I think maybe the difference between rail racing, as we're hoping to see return very shortly, and sim racing is the different effects between the two different disciplines. And I don't know quite what the effect would be for Jordan Pepper following other cars. Would he have been compromised at any point, or is it just simulation and there is no sort of knock-on effect from maybe interference from aero, or maybe just getting a little bit too close to another car, losing momentum? Nevertheless, Jordan Pepper was at pole position. He certainly won in Silverstone. I think it was Cristani and the McLaren. Jordan Pepper won in Silverstone by a country mile, and he's done the beginnings of once again looking like a very good start to the South in pole position.
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, I think it's interesting that on this grid that we've got, most of the championship frontrunners are at the front now. I mean, the standout really is what he mentioned, Luigi Di Lorenzo in 14th and Ivan Pereiras in 19th. But apart from that, you've got even the fringe championship players like Yabarnikotes up near the front of the order, where we saw much more, I felt, of a divergence in Spa last time out of who exactly was where and who would likely be scoring points.
It's going to be really interesting, this race. You're absolutely right in identifying how the front of the grid is for the championship. So the man on pole is second equal. The man alongside him is sixth. The second row, you've got Ben Barnicoat, who is fifth, and Alessio Picariello, who we've not yet seen in the championship because he's had all sorts of internet dramas that have precluded his participation. Then you've got Michael O'Brien and Fabrizio Crestani. Well, Crestani's had a pole, but he's not had the results yet. And then you get on the fourth row to Marcucci, second equal with Jordan Pepper. So you've got some drivers in there who aren't yet featuring in the championship or can have a good day here and try and get themselves up. So as we had at Spa, you can do your crude maths while the race goes on. We're looking at the qualification classification here at the moment, but I think it's going to be a really jumbled race order and a very jumbled championship come the end of this. And again, go back to Silverstone, go back to what we saw at Spa. These are real world drivers. They're used to a real physical car and the feel that that gives you. They're not sim experts. And we often see more mistakes being made in this race than we do out of the silvers for the drivers that are regulars, experts even, on the sim itself.
Well, let's bring in Ben Constanduras, our sim racing expert on this, because we are only a couple of minutes away from getting this race underway, Ben. And without wanting to, I feel like every time I talk to you, it's about very sort of vapid base things. But like the one I think I'm noticing about Nürburgring at this time of day is the track looks amazing. I know there's more to it than that, and the physics are incredible, but the way that this circuit is looking at this time of night is quite startling. I noticed it in particular there when we were watching Jordan Pepper's lap.
I like to use the word correspondent rather than expert, because I don't feel like an expert at all. And David, I'm sure, is going to prove that throughout the next couple of hours. You're right, though. It does look stunning. And I was shouting at the last race for a kind of an evening race. We've got that with our pro competitors. And I've been talking about how beautiful and scary it is in the wet, and potentially we'll see that with our silver competitors. So we are really showing off the capacity of a game that's really a platform that's only 2 years old. You know, a lot of the races that we're seeing that you're presenting and from around the world, they are games and platforms that have been created 10 years ago. So the capabilities are so different now. And Assetto Corsa Competizione is only, I don't even know if it's 2 years old. And therefore, we do get the very best out of the computers that are now able to facilitate this kind of beauty. So the sun will be setting throughout this race. I can't wait to see how drivers kind of deal with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have got 2 races coming up for you today in the SRO Esport GT Series. The first race is for the professional racing drivers. That is about to get underway. They're about to start their warm-up lap now, come around to the grid. Then we'll have a 1-hour race, a short break before we get on to our 1-hour race for the silver class, which is for the top-line sim racers. But as the cars pull away now on their formation lap, it's time to hand over to the gentleman that will be calling the race. We'll have Ben Constanduris, our sim racing correspondent, as he would like to be known. We've got 5 times Grand Prix winner John Watson, and bringing you the coverage as ever here on SRO GT, it's David Addison.
Jack, thank you very much. We'll see you in an hour's time. Thanks very much indeed, as we are set to go racing then. There is, however, a gap on the grid, and Ben might be able to shed a bit of light on this, but it looks like Jenson Button, sadly, Ben, is missing from the grid as they get away.
Yeah, it does look like that. I'm not quite sure exactly why that is, but I noticed he wasn't in the practice session earlier on, and he has had issues with his connectivity over the last couple of weeks, both in this racing and other racing he's been doing, and it just perhaps means that demand on the internet wherever he is in the world is too high, and his ping is too big.
18th he was in qualifying, but he is offline, so unless we can stitch Button back on quickly, looks like he's going to be missing from this first 1-hour race. It's round 3 of the SRO GT Sports Championship for the professional drivers. It is going to be another great race, and Jordan Pepper is the man that won at Silverstone. He starts on pole position, but Watty, there is going to be Louis Delatraz alongside in the Porsche. German circuit, German car. Could it be a home win for the 911?
Be lovely, wouldn't it? Because Bentley have won, Audi has won, Porsche here in Germany, it would be a complete natural. But look, back to Silverstone. As soon as Jordan Pepper got a sniff of the lead in the Bentley, he was off and running. And nobody looked like they were going to get within, well, we talk about a country mile in England, let's call it a country kilometre here at Nürburgring. So it'll be about the sprint down into turn 1. And remember, turn 1 is you got a good, then you've got a pinch point at the grip, and inevitably will always be some form of, let's say, confusion amongst the competitors as to which part of the racetrack they can say this is mine and the competitor alongside. It's always a very tricky first corner, first lap entry. Front row of the grid, if they've got a brain in their heads, they should, rather than getting involved in unnecessary collisions. This is a 1-hour race, and lots can happen in 1 hour, not just in one corner.
Very true. And as Ben was making the point, it's an evening race. We are looking at 7:05 local time, so the conditions, therefore, for the air temperature and how that will affect the cars are simulated accurately. They make their way now up towards the chicane. It's the so-called motorbike version of the chicane, the more flowing, softer, less stop-start, less mayhem-inducing version of the chicane. The FIA approved officials, Peter Roberts as the race director, Richard Norbury as the steward, will be looking on to make sure that everybody behaves themselves. If the order is good, when they get themselves out of the final corner on the lap, then we'll be good to go racing to get our pro 1-hour thrash underway. Here they come then. The grid is formed. The man on pole position is Jordan Pepper. It is Louis Delatraz alongside him. The second row is Ben Barnicoat and Alessio Picariello. McLaren versus Porsche on row 2. It's Porsche, though, that gets the drop on Bentley from row 1. And Louis Delatraz is away like a robber's dog down towards turn 1 as they head towards the Mercedes arena. Ben Barnicoat tries to have a look up on the inside line. Is there going to be contact? No, they just about avoid it. Round the outside line goes Picariello, and that's Jordan Pepper. He does get it wrong, or he did get a tap. Either way, exit stage right. The McLarens go side by side. Ben Barnicoat coming under attack. Michael O'Brien is in the mix as well. 25 is the Audi of Arthur Rougier as they thread their way around the Mercedes arena for the first time. But John talked about a pinch point, and inevitably, John, we've lost a car. There's more mayhem in the background.
Yes, it did look to me as if there was a light contact. The front of the McLaren, Ben Barnicoat, the rear of the Bentley, Jordan Pepper. And as we've seen in the 2 previous rounds, even the slightest contact in a sim event will rotate a car or take a car off track. So that will be looked at. Now, Ben Barnicoat was coming down into turn. When he tried to go down the inside initially, there wasn't space. The contact actually happened more towards the exit of turn 1. In the meantime, Louis Delatraz, he's up and running, and, well, he's not even sight of Ben Barnicoat, who's running in second.
Mayhem down at turn 8 after Rougier has been through the gravel. Crestani, I think, has had a spin. There's an Aston getting roughed up in there as well. Might have been Giotto's car, but we'll come back to all of that. Ben is going to have a look at some of these incidents as well and try and unravel it for us. But Delatraz has made good his escape. He's already 1.6 seconds clear of the opposition, as on this opening lap, Ben Barnicoat runs second. Third is Picariello, and already Michael O'Brien being shown as heading for the pit lane. James Pull has picked up a drive-through penalty, seemingly down in 20th place. So, Ben, a lot's been going on this first lap of the race.
Yeah, absolutely, and most key was there was the slightest of kisses between Barnicoat and Pepper on the exit of that first turn, and basically Jordan Pepper just got turned around the front of Ben Barnicoat because of the contact. I don't think there was contact with the wall though, so Jordan Pepper's Bentley should be pretty straight, and damage is simulated and is punished very badly in sim racing, so if you do damage your car, it slows it down a lot. I have a feeling that the Bentley will be okay with that, but we have to wait and see what race direction thought about the contact with Ben Barnicoat.
Indeed, we'll keep an eye to exactly how far back it has dropped Jordan Pepper. As you see going through there, Maxime Yefanov in the blue and yellow, almost Scandinavian liveried Ferrari. He's chasing on behind Matt Samuel, who has been consistent, albeit a long way down the order, a couple of 23rds out of the 2 races we've had thus far. Yefanov's best was 12th last time out at Spa. There he goes in the Ferrari, making the run now down towards the turn 5-6 S's, plunge downhill and then down to the very bottom of the lap at turn 8. But Yefanov for the moment, John, not close enough to make a move here.
No, he's not. And just talking about Jordan Pepper, he is in 24th. So basically his race is run. He's most likely, unless something unforeseen happens, going to finish out of the points when he was sitting in pole position and had everything looking favourable to him. So that contact will be looked at by the race director, race steward, to see whether that is a punishable contact. I mean, we saw it was barely a kiss, let alone a thump, but it was sufficient just to rotate the Bentley. In the meantime, Delatraz is just piling on the pressure, pulling away from Barnicoat. And then the second of the 2 Porsches, Alessio Picariello, good day so far, but only, 4 minutes or so into this race, first and third.
Absolutely right. And Picariello, who's been threatening to join the championship, it's good to have him with us finally, doing a good job then. So what can Jordan Pepper do from 24th? We're keeping an eye to the race direction channel as well to see what might pan out of all of that. As you look at Crestani in the purple McLaren, now he's in 18th place after his spin down at turn 8. That is Issa Al Khalifa, who's come from the Pure McLaren GT Series, just running up ahead of him. Dan Wells is 16th, the British driver ahead of this gaggle, behind whom you've got the McLarens coming through. Scott Mulvin currently running in 12th place in the Team Parker Racing Bentley. There it is, number 66. And Scott Mulvin is on the back of Ivan Pereiras. Now remember, that Audi of Pereiras is heavy. He was second at Spa, he's 4th in the championship. As you look at Alex Buncombe, and he is keeping David Perel at bay. So lots of good battles raging on. And also, John, that lead gap's come down a fraction.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, I suppose, once the race gets underway, settled down. You know, the McLaren probably a little bit, maybe more gentle on its tyres as we watch the battle. The car's just coming down into what we call Valvoline curve. It might be called turn 6. Another parlance then down through the Ford curve, which leads to the lowest part of the racetrack down at Dunlop curve. That curve we're going through sometimes is given a corner number, but probably for the sake and ease of recognition, we're down now at Dunlop curve and on the Bentley as they make their way back up the hill into Shell curve. Now, that used to be the Michael Schumacher S's. What's happened to poor old Michael Schumacher's name? Should it be still Michael Schumacher S's, I think?
I think we can go with that. I think it depends whether you're talking about, pure sponsor names or the original names.
Sympathy for the man.
Names. We'll go with the Michael Schumacher S's, definitely. Now, as you look at Alex Buncombe's Bentley, news from the stewards, the incident involving Ben Barnicoat and Jordan Pepper on the opening lap, no further action. So Ben Barnicoat is safe and he's closing on Louis Delatraz as Alex Buncombe heads up now towards the chicane. Alex, seemingly, Ben, having his best showing of the season thus far, going really nicely.
Yeah, it looks like Bentley have really sorted themselves out for this particular track, perhaps on the back foot with many of their drivers when it came to Silverstone, but with Andy Susek well up there and Alex Buncombe and of course Jordan Pepper leading the way, perhaps Jordan Pepper has helped out his teammates a little bit to give it a proper army of Bentleys at the head of the field. Either way, we've had plenty of support from the PR department, and they've done such a fantastic job of almost treating this as though it was real life and trying to maximise the amount of brand awareness. They really have done a great job for it. And now Susek rewarding them with being in fourth spot.
Yeah, look at just Rouget just squeezing past Daniel Serra, trying to get onto the tail. Serra was looking to get past Seb Morris in the 31 Bentley. That didn't work. So Rouget bullied his way through, got past the Ferrari. Now he's got his sights on the back of the Brit in the Bentley as they make their way now down the hill, eventually getting down to the lowest part of the racetrack once again.
So Jordan Pepper climbing back up the order, riding on board with Arthur Rougier, who was another revolver on the opening lap. So Rougier now goes through turns 5 and 6 to drop down the hill. Number 14 there you can see going through. The next of the Lamborghinis hustling on, but Daniel Serra coming under attack as they drop down towards turn 8. From the back of the grid, you've got Ricky Collard making progress, 30th, but he's shown as having been given a drive through. Now, that's not come up on the race direction channel, so I'm imagining that's for track limits, Ben. Is that right?
It could well be an automatic track limit infringement.
Yeah.
They'll all be treated by the in-game computer, so if you do exceed track limits too much and gain, I think it's more than a second, judged by the computer in previous laps and experience the computer has of what you do on track, it will automatically give you a drive-through. Now, Race Direction can remove that if they want, okay. But it's a big infringement to get a drive-through straight away.
Quick word about the wild card in this race as well, because in 28th place is Alessio Romagnoli, the AC Milan captain in the FFF racing team entry. There is Jordan Pepper, who's about to gain another place. He's now 20th at the expense of Al Khalifa, and more drama diving down towards turn 1. Raffaele Marciello there on the attack. He's gone through, but he's gone wide ahead of Di Lorenzo. One up and one back for Raffaele Marciello, so he was briefly 13th. He's back down to 14th. Jordan Pepper coming under attack from Simone Iaquinta in the Porsche, but Jordan Pepper needs to get himself back into that top 10 to score points, and he's on a charge, no question, John.
Absolutely, but of course we know the Nürburgring, it's 5.1 kilometres around, 16 corners, one of the most difficult circuits on the calendar to actually find a way around a competitive car. But Jordan Pepper has got the car. The Bentley was the quick. It's running without any success ballast. He is probably fired up mildly with that rather just unfortunate exit out of turn 1 where he dropped back outside the top 20 considerably. Now we're running in, well, actually 20th place and looking to make up one space. He's 1.5 seconds behind Yafanov in the Ferrari, and one would assume pull up that Ferrari pretty quickly.
This is the view from the Ginzano Arco Motorsport Porsche of Simone Iaquinta. He's chasing after Jordan Pepper in the Bentley. We've been talking about how good the graphics are. So too are the car noises as you ride on board with the Porsche now. Iaquinta runs a little bit wide, doesn't he, there, going through the S's, rides up the curb, but that might just cost him a length or two. So Iaquinta in 21st place, trying to recover that lost ground as they head off towards the Ad Van Bogen, this fast right-hander. Make the climb up the hill, then towards the chicane. In the meantime, though, it remains the Louis Delatraz Porsche leading the way, and Jordan Pepper in 20th. He's still got a lot of work to do to get into the points, but he has, of course, got 50 minutes in which to do this. Now, next battle to look for is for 9th place. Alex Buncombe, ahead of Coach Dave himself, David Perel, and David Perel going much better here than we saw at Spa. Yeah,
but he's been behind Alex Buncombe now for, 2 or so laps. And all the education he's been giving these pro drivers to enable them to compete successfully in a sim race, well, maybe they're being sort of thrown back in a race driver saying, look, I may not be a sim racer, but I'm a good racer, whatever the system, racing live or racing sim. So if you're going to find a way past my substantial Bentley in your more minuscule Ferrari, you're going to have to earn it. There's no give up.
Absolutely right. Now, what about this battle? Ivan Pereiras in the red Audi, keeping Scott Malvern at bay. Now, don't forget that Pereiras comes into this race 4th in the championship, but his car, 42 kilos heavier than at Spa, because Audi's banked 1st and 2nd places. So coming up the hill now, that's going to be really handicapped. Meantime, Buncombe is keeping Perel at bay. This is for 9th place, so these are the last 2 drivers in the points. A look further down, Ben. What about Jordan Pepper? He's a bit stuck for the minute, isn't he, down in 20th?
Yeah, Jordan Pepper's not making a huge amount of progress. I've actually been keeping half an eye on the battle for third position because Andy Susek has done a great job of really closing on the tail of the Porsche. And in fact, he now looks down the inside.
Ooh.
Good work from our director. There's contact between the two.
Picariello goes off the road. Yes, John?
That was a real hip and shoulder. Then the next Bentley upline, Monty in the number 10 Bentley also sees an opportunity to get past the Porsche, which was literally a snooker ball attack as it came into that final chicane. So the Porsche has dropped back, lost 2 places due to that contact. Again, that'll be something that'll be looked at. And because there was a benefit to Soucek in that overtake, he may be required to drop back and let the Porsche, well, in fact, I'd have to let Monty go through as interesting call to see whether that will get the attention of the race stewards or whether that will be given a bye, as was the case with the touch in the opening lap in the first corner between Barnicoat and Pepper.
We'll keep an eye to it. Right now, the lead gap has gone up again. It's doubled. Delatraz to Barnicoat from when we last monitored it. Soucek third, Monty now fourth, Picariello down to fifth. Lorenzo Marcucci, the Spa winner, is in 6th place. Seb Morris is being given a drive-through for an incident on the opening lap with Michael Grenier, so number 31, Bentley. It's 22nd at the moment, Seb Morris, but he's about to tumble down the order. The man from North Wales will get this drive-through and plunge down the order accordingly. Now, Picariello under attack from Marcucci. There is the Porsche, and we'll get this out of the way now because it's worth doing each race. Ben, please just explain on that graphic why some drivers have more of a yellow bar ahead of the car brand. What does that mean?
It's basically their internet connection. We already know that Picariello has struggled to be part of this championship because of his internet connection. It seems as though we've lost Jenson Button perhaps because of that. Yep. Look at Dan Wells as well. He's struggling with his internet connection. If the car hasn't got a good internet connection and it moves around on track in front of you, it may actually disappear and reappear again. And of course, that can be so distracting to the cars around you. You have no idea where your rival is on circuit. You can even collide with it without even seeing it. So very important to have good internet connection so it's a fair race for all. And if that gets any bigger for Picariello, he may well be thrown out of the race.
Okay, so in other words, keep an eye on Picariello and Dan Wells with those yellow bars. The greater they get, the more strife they're in with the internet. Here, coming up towards the timing line, Scott Mulvin in the Bentley, trying to make a move against the man that leads the championship, Luigi Di Lorenzo. Now, significantly, Di Lorenzo is out of the points right now. Down they go towards turn 1, the Aston on the outside line. You've got Raffaele Marciello there looking the Mercedes as they thread their way up now through turns 2 and 3. Scott Mulvin hung out to dry on the outside. Marciello on the attack. Now, Raffaele has got work to do. He's only 7th in the championship after a poor run at Spa, but he was 3rd at Silverstone. But the championship leader, John, on the back foot. Di Lorenzo only 12th, not scoring right now.
No, and he looked slow off that final turn. He looked like he was about to get mugged by the 3 cars, including Marciello directly behind. But he's carrying an additional 10 kilograms. Now, that's not a huge amount of extra weight you have to carry. So I don't know why the Aston didn't have that punch off the final turn. That's the Romework curve onto the quickest part of the circuit down into turn 1. He's now backing them all up with Marciello directly behind him, Scott Mulvin, and then Santamato in 15th place. So it's, to me, the lack of pace from the Aston is a surprise.
What's also interesting is we've had a bit more shuffling on the back end of the top 10. So David Perel is 9th, 10th Alex Buncombe. Ivan Pereiras dumped out of the points. There he is in the red Audi, just ahead of this battle pack. So Pereiras, who is 4th in the championship, not scoring. There's the championship leader, Di Lorenzo, not scoring. And a word about the man that's 8th, Ben Tusting, who came to prominence really at Silverstone. Historic single-seater racer initially, Ben Tusting, but he goes really well in Sim GT3 cars. Ben Tusting up into 8th place in his McLaren as Marciello makes a move on the inside of Di Lorenzo, who gets crowded out all over the runoff. Gap opens up on the inside. Marciello goes through. Scott Mulvin is up the curb, elbows out, muscles his way alongside Di Lorenzo. And behind all of them, Arno Santamato tries to buy into this, but the championship leader, well and truly getting roughed up there, Watty.
Absolutely, just I think confirms what I observed a lap earlier coming out of that final turn. The Aston doesn't appear to have the squirt where he needs it. He got outmaneuvered coming into that chicane by Raffaele Marciello, who did a smart switchback. That opened up the opportunity for Scott Mulvin and Santamato to try and find a way through, which they all three have done in the space of those 2 corners. And now the Aston not only is out of the points, it's well and truly out of the points, going backwards. Incidentally, Jordan Pepper, whose progress we had been watching earlier, he's dropped back 1 place behind La Quinta in the Porsche. He's now got Arda Rouget directly behind him, half a second behind, but he's so far back. Again, all he's looking for, consolidation, keep it clean, and you never know what will happen. We've got 43 minutes of this race to run.
Absolutely right, but yes, you're quite accurate to spot. He has dropped back a place, which is interesting because we were anticipating that he would be making progress. Well, let's see what else might shake out of this race before the very end. Out of turn 8 there goes Luigi De Lorenzo, chasing after the Mercedes, Ivano Santamato. Real world winners in the sprint races here last year. Aston in race 2 for Ricky Collard and Marvin Kirchhofer. And in race 1, it was Marco Mappelli and Andrea Caldarelli, who apparently is going to be testing tomorrow and Tuesday. Real world testing, back at a circuit, driving a real car around a real track. That's why his focus isn't on sim today. It's on getting the team set up, ready to go testing in the week. However, there, look, 188, the championship Spa race winner, Lorenzo Marcucci, second equal, coming into this race with Jordan Pepper, and he's looking for 5th against Alessio Picariello. Luca Giotto, who is 10th in the title race. He's the next man on track in 7th, ahead of Ben Tussing and then David Perel. Picariello's Porsche goes through. It's Porsche that leads the way. The GPX colours of Louis Delatraz, 1.3 seconds ahead of Ben Barnicoat. And down the inside goes Marcucci, and is it going to pay off for him? Yes, it will. He's got the line coming out of the corner, John.
I didn't know much about Marcucci until he won at Spa last week. I'm getting to know an awful lot about him as we watch him here battling with the Porsche. Remember, the Audi is carrying a 42 kilogram disadvantage over everybody else in this group of cars. So this is actually a pretty special drive from the Italian to keep the pressure on. He's in 6th place right now. He got his nose momentarily ahead of Picariello, but wasn't able to make it stick in that little complex of turns 2, 3, and then 4, or as we'd like to call them, turns 2, 3, and 4.
And he's still the best placed of the Audi drivers, isn't he? He's defending, he's attacking Picariello's Porsche, and he's also humbling the other Audi drivers right now as they come down towards turn 8 once more. Lead gap 1.4 seconds. Delatraz looking as though he's got it under control. Now this is a replay of the start. Have a look, Jordan Pepper's Bentley.
In fairness, I have to say, it looked like he got his left rear tyre. That's Jordan Pepper on the curb. Maybe the bit of moisture. It's late in the evening, 7:30, but the race got underway at 7 o'clock. Maybe he just picked up a little bit of moisture on the throttle. Didn't, to me, in that image, look like Ben Barnicoat. Initially, I thought Ben Barnicoat had made contact. Seeing that now, I think that might have been Jordan just getting a little bit of wheel spin, left rear, and around it went.
Well, the net result is it dumped him out of the points, and he's even further down. He's 22nd now, Jordan Pepper, behind Arthur Rougier. Now, Ben was touching on real-world damage being simulated in this and hoping that Bentley was okay, but Ben, it rather looks as though there is something inherently wrong now with number 3 Bentley. Jordan Pepper, 2 more places dropped from where he was a few laps back.
Yeah, and visually it doesn't look too much of a problem, but he's certainly struggling, and actually now a Lamborghini goes blasting past as well. Okay. So Jordan Pepper really, really struggling here. Perhaps damaged his tyres in sliding sideways. Perhaps that is the issue that he's struggling with, but either way, nowhere near the pace. Just to update you on the people that we've lost from the race, because we've had a couple of retirements. Compac didn't even start, or he did start the race, but he didn't finish the first lap. James Poole came into the pits after a couple of laps. Kang Ling is also out. Michael O'Brien is running again, but way, way back down the field. And I think Seb Morris may have bailed out of the race after getting that drive-through penalty. Vittorio Liuzzi and Martin Kodrick also still in the pits with Chris Froggatt.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ben. Yes, Michael O'Brien was another one that got a drive-through very early on. So if he is back out and circulating, he's certainly playing catch-up, isn't he, as best he can now. So right now, David Perel closing on Ben Tusting. This is the fight going on for 8th and 9th places. David Perel knows all about real-world racing. He's a very good sim racer as well through the Coach Dave Academy evidence. And he's on the back of Tusting, who is on the back of Giotto. So here, John, I think we're going to have a bit of shuffling.
Yeah. The overtake, but David Perel finally got away around Alex Buncombe and the Bentley, who is now running 1.8 seconds behind the Ferrari, but the Ferrari pushing very hard, closed up quickly to the tail of this group of cars. Ben Tusting in 8th place, Giotto 7th, Marcucci, the winner from Spa, in 6th, and they're all curb hopping like crazy as they come through the Vidal chicane and then into this final Romer curve, spelt with a K, by the way, not with a C.
Now, Fabrizio Crestani is being given a 10-second stop-go penalty for causing an accident on the first lap of the race. I think that was coming out of the Mercedes arena. We spotted mayhem in the background. It involved 1, 2, 3 others. So he's being given a stop-go. David Perel, in the meantime, is giving a real work over here to Luca Giotto as the two of them run nose to tail for 7th place. They're both ahead of Ben Tusting, as we've seen. And David Perel hunting for a way past. They're catching Marcucci, who is stuck behind Picariello. So really here, the battle pack is 5th all the way down to 9th place, isn't it?
It's a tight group of cars all the way 5th place down to, well, let's count Alex Bunkerman to round out the top 10. Yeah. But it's the usual story at Nürburgring when you get such a competitive group of cars. Oh, whoa, whoa. Now, what went on there with the Aston Martin? All of a sudden, it seemed to be slightly slow again, just getting out of shape on the chicane on the exit of the Ford curve down the hill. And again, you can see just about Giotto hangs on to that 7th place, but seriously under threat from David Perel. And again, if the Ferrari can get its nose ahead, no doubt it will be able to pull pretty quickly as the field, one of the Lamborghinis gets out of the way. That's in problems.
Yeah, don't forget that Aston Martin carrying an extra 10 kilos, as John rightly said earlier. It shouldn't make that much difference around here, but it is a little bit extra weight relative to the Ferrari here, which accelerates on towards the Ad Van Bogen. Speed building, the road then starts to climb uphill, heading towards the chicane. The Rebellion clock ticks on down. We've got less than 37 minutes of the race to go. Is Perel close enough to think about a move? Not this time. Flick left, flick right, and now up towards the completion of the lap, turn 17, past the hotel on the outside of the road. We've got one car way up the curb on the inside. It was Picariello. That compromises the exit onto the pit straight. There is Crestani, who's got this penalty to serve, and he's under attack from the car through on the inside indeed there. Matt Samuel going nicely, but Picariello, I fear, is not long for that 5th place. Drama down at turn 1. There's a car off. I think that was the Porsche. Picariello looked as though he has gone either with help or of his own moment off the road.
Just like, looked to me as he did something, didn't happen. He just went straight down. He didn't even appear to turn.
Now Ben might be able to have a look in the game at that for us and try and add to the evidence, as you see Maxim Yefanov get up the inside of Crestani for 18th place. But drama down at turn 1, which simulates what we had in the real world in a sense last year with the WRT Audis handing victory to Aston Martin when they tangled and gave Ricky Collard and Marvin Kirkhope for a win.
Well, Crestani is just about hanging on by the skin of his teeth, keeping the Ferrari behind him. McLaren's ought to be competitive because they're running without ballast. We know that they were very quick. Crestani started on the 3rd row of the grid in 6th place, but because of that, whatever the penalty he got, he's down in 18th and really being defensive rather than attacking.
It was quite a mix-up, David, down the start-finishing straight. Picariello squeezed Marcucci to the wall and they made contact before they even got to the first corner. Picariello was out of control in the braking zone and collected Luca Giotto as well. So 3 cars affected there, and it's a big shame for Giotto, although I think he should be okay damage-wise.
Okay, thanks for that, Ben. Jordan Pepper is your next one to investigate because he's pitted, having fallen further and further down the order. I may have to whisper this, but David Perel has been given a warning from the stewards. Now, that was why Picariello had a poor exit onto the pit straight, because he made a right mons of the chicane. That, therefore, got Marcucci onto his tail. And then, as Ben was explaining, it all kicked off down at turn 1.
Yeah, and then what he did was he actually lost it. He drove over the demarcation curb before you come into the pit lane. He then drove over to get back on the racetrack, which is serious no-no if you're real-time racers. So again, that's going to be observed and given consideration, because not something you're meant to be doing. Crestani, by the way, just has gone into the pit lane. As we see there, he is on the inside of those 2 cars, making their way back for one more lap. 34 minutes to go.
Yeah, that's the 10-second stop go for Crestani. And you're looking at David Perel attacking and defending. The attacking is against Marcucci. The defending is against the McLaren of Ben Tusting. And this is for 6th, 7th and 8th places. Sorry, 5th, 6th and 7th places, I should say, because Alex Buncombe is the man 8th. Not that far behind them. The lead gap is 1.6 seconds, 1.7 seconds at the next split. Delatraz, we've not seen very much of him really since the race started, but Louis Delatraz second generation racer, good in single seaters, and of course a House F1 tester when real racing gets back underway. He leads from Ben Barnicoat, his father Jean-Denis Delatraz, single seater racer turned GT racer, and Jean-Denis, school friend and ultimate sponsor in his early days of Alain Menu, who actually did a lot of driver coaching with Louis in his early days.
Well, David Perel pushing. Marcucci with the overweight Audi, 42 kilograms success ballast on that car. So that will hurt a little bit in the acceleration all the way up from the Dunlop curve through the Schumacher S's. And anywhere where you're climbing, then you're going to be hurting. Ben Barnicoat chasing vainly, 1.7 seconds. There's the Porsche just ahead. So both cars, well, Delatraz is looking in his mirrors now because he knows that McLaren's closing down. Barnicoat has got a sniff of this, whatever's coming out of the exhaust of those Porsches. He wants a bit more of it.
Well, what was 1.7 is down by half a second to 1.2 seconds now. So the lead battle starting to take up attention. The incident, incidentally, between Picariello et al. At turn 1 is being looked at. The officials rather busy, of course, still unravelling the first lap, as now you see David Perel have a go down the inside line. It's going to go ahead of Marcucci there. That's for 5th place. Ben Tusting tries to buy into this as well in the McLaren, but he's going to be on the outside line for turn 2. Marcucci fends him off, but David Perel is flying. He's getting better and better, quicker and quicker as the race wears on. He's up now into 5th place, but it's game on for the race lead, isn't it, John? Barnicoat catching the Porsche.
Yeah, let me just say that was smart driving by Marcucci. He knew that David Perel was going to dive down the inside, take away that inside line into turn 1. What he didn't want to do was let Ben Tusting slide through as well. So what he did was concede, but at the same time defend. Remember the championship positions. This is a race or series of championship. Marcucci currently second equal on 25 points. He doesn't want to lose any more points. He had to concede that position. That was we're seeing David Perel in 5th, so he had to concede 5th place to Perel, but he's still picking up points, and that's going to be the key to this championship. Score when you can.
Talking of scoring, AC Milan's Alessio Romagnoli there is in 22nd place, going after Diego Casarat in the Audi. Behind is the lapped Chris Froggatt Ferrari that's back out again, I think, looking at the livery. So he's on track, although not having a very happy time of it. But the wild card in this race, Alessio Romagnoli, doing a pretty decent job, isn't he? In 22nd, he's no sim expert, but I think that's a pretty good effort.
He's making it look far too easy. Stick to scoring goals or saving goals. I don't know what position he plays in. I don't follow football closely, but unless it's Liverpool, of course. But he's done a brilliant job.
You're in a Manchester United house here, John. You can't use words like Liverpool, good heavens. Liverpool nil, as it's known. Romagnoli doing a good job. Now, what about Ben Barnicoat? He's doing a ripper job. He's got the gap down from 1.7 to 0.499 in 2 laps. So now, Delatraz is going to have to make that car very wide. But Ben, from your evidence looking inside the game, do we know where all the time has gone? Is this Ben Barnicoat upping his pace? Is it Delatraz with a problem? Because those 2 laps really have cost Delatraz dear, haven't they?
Barnicoat's been on a stormer of 55.4. Behind him, Susek's on a 55.3. And Monty's on a 55.3. But Delatraz, 56.1, isn't much different to what David Perel and the guys behind are battling. So it's just a very slow lap from Louis Delatraz. I'll have a look to see where the time was lost.
I didn't think Porsches did slow laps, John. Something's not right there.
Well, I just wonder, it's 7:36 in the evening. The air temperature is dropping down. Now, the Porsche with the engine over the back axle or behind the back axle, normally, in these conditions, I would have assumed it would be working pretty well. But the McLarens have come alive, as have the 2 Bentleys in 3rd and 4th position, now that they've shed the 25 or whatever kilogram success ballast they had when they went to Spa-Francorchamps. And we're getting closer now to seeing these 3 different brands running in the top 4 positions. Which of those is going to be the one that's going to take the checkered flag in just under 30 minutes?
We're not done yet, are we? Far from it, because with the lead gap now 1/5 of a second, it won't be long before Ben Barnicoat starts to tee up to make a move. This is Marcucci that you're riding with, so he's down in 7th place now. Ben Tusting is another of the finds of the championship. Marcucci is, for my money, because little known about him really, but he's come to prominence. Ben Tusting's doing a great job as well. And Ben Barnicoat, we know he's good, whether it's in a GT3 McLaren or a GT4. He was a Formula Renault champion won races in FIA Formula 3, of course, before he switched to GT racing, but he's right there on the back of Delatraz. And now as they come through the Mercedes arena, it looks as though Ben Barnicoat will not be far off being able to make a move. We've still got really just under half the race to go. So if he was biding his time and looking after the rubber, he's done a good job of that, because now he's certainly got the length of time left in the race to have a go.
Yes, I mean, he's done the hard yards to get into this position, to get into just under half a second differential between first and second. But this is where it starts to get a lot tougher. What Delatraz can do, and if he's got a good brain in his head, and I suspect that he, coming from a racing family, he does, he'll become the most awkward race car on the racetrack to pass. It's a big car. I mean, people think of 911s as being tiny, but this is a physically big car, larger than the McLaren, and the McLaren ain't any shrinking violet either, for that matter. So it's all about what Delatraz can now do, knowing that if Barnicoat can cut that gap down to, well, it's 0.6 as they came out of the Dunlop curve, it doesn't really matter, a tenth here, a tenth there. What Barnicoat needs to do is not lose his momentum. If he gets too close to the Porsche, that's what will happen. He'll lose the momentum and possibly lose the opportunity to take victory.
Quite interesting, actually, John, just how different the lap times are, lap by lap. There's no real consistency going on here, and I wonder whether the drivers are struggling with tyres and also conditions, kind of wearing the tyres out more and more. Delatraz was slow 2 laps ago. Ben Barnicoat's particularly slow on this lap, and I think Barnicoat's going to do another 1:56 on this lap. They're coming round to finish the lap now, so I can confirm, but most drivers are at least 3 to 4 tenths of a second off their best lap, and so I think the temperature and the lack of UV on the track is giving away grip, and therefore they are all slow. And indeed, Ben Barnicoat does a 56.1 to Delatraz's 55.6.
Ben, that's a new one to me. UV on the track. Explain, please. Ultraviolet.
Yes. Well, no. What comes out of the sun?
I know what you mean. Okay. Anyway, the sun's gone in. The temperature is dropping as it always does. We're up in the Eiffel Mountains. It's getting chilly at this time of evening, but the tyres will have been at race temperature. The track temperature would need to drop significantly to have a total bearing. Maybe tyre wear, or maybe just the balance front to rear. Maybe all those things come into play.
The other thing that we've got, of course, is traffic, and I gather that Barnicoat closed that lead gap initially thanks to some back markers getting in the way of Delatraz. Now, Alessio Picariello, welcome to the championship. He's being given a drive-through penalty and 3 penalty points for causing a collision with Marcucci and also the 62 Luca Giotto Aston down at turn 1. So the officials have had a look. We are looking in the meantime at what's going on for 10th and 11th. That's the recovering Giotto with Raffaele Marciello bearing down on him. Scott Mulvin here is 12th, looking at what's going on ahead as they climb the hill out of turn 8. Marciello working hard, not yet in the points. And Delatraz still leads by a second. Yes, John.
And I tell you, when Marciello was following you, you need a mirror as big as your windscreen, because you never know where he's going to make a move, and he can do it unpredictably, or he can do it with sublime skill. And that's always the challenge and the excitement of watching Raffaele Marciello in his Mercedes-AMG GT3, challenging, trying to get away around the Aston.
Now there you've got the worked Bentley of Andy Soucek against the Bullet Racing colours carried by Romain Monti. Here they come onto the pit straight. This is the fight for third. So it's Porsche, McLaren, Bentley 1, 2, 3 and 4. But significantly, it's the Porsche, McLaren, Bentley brands that, if things stay as they are, will carry the weight going into the next race, which will be at Barcelona. And remember that for the one after that, it's up to you to decide where we go, because there is this vote as to which circuit we end up for the 5th and final round of the championship. Now, Scott Mulvin, hard at work, 12th there. Giotto loses out, does he? Because Marciello goes through on the inside, and Marciello now gets himself into the points.
Yeah, and that was a well-executed pass, and Giotto did the right thing. He didn't get aggressive with Raffaele Marciello. If you get into an arm wrestle with the Italian, normally you both come off the wrong way, not just one. So the Mercedes makes up a place, gotten ahead up into top 10, so he will score a single point. Scott Mulvin following now the Aston Martin. He's going to try and hopefully maybe capitalise on Giotto maybe being slightly wrong-footed, but close enough to think about it, going down the hill into the lowest part of the racetrack, down into Dunlop curve. But an acceleration, as ever, the Aston just pulls out that additional 2-3 car lengths Scott Marvin's got to be a bit more patient. Maybe it'll work on the return leg of this 5-kilometre circuit.
And ahead of him is the Aston Martin that was involved in that incident down at turn 1 on lap 13. So it's conceivable, Ben, isn't it, that Giotto not only has to cope with the extra 10 kilos of weight for this race in the Aston, but also that car is not totally au point. Out of the S's they come. You can see how Marciello is getting away all the while now as they sprint their way up towards the Ad Van Bogen once again. So we're on lap 19. We've got just over 23 minutes of the race to go. The lead gap is 0.8 of a second. Over the timing line they have gone. Souček runs third. You're looking back from Giotto, and closing is Mulvin as they dive into the chicane.
And again, he'll be looking away and see how the Aston runs the curb. It bottoms out, so into this final turn onto the start-finish straight. So has the Bentley got the straight line squirt? It is running without weight. The Aston's got that 10 kilograms that we keep referring to. Well, it doesn't really look like Scott Mulvin's got much available to him to make any difference coming down into turn 1. Under braking, certainly closes up, over brakes almost, misses the apex, but gets it back, and now he's got another opportunity to draw that gap down coming through turn 2, which leads into turn 3, which is in effect of one massive apex. Gets the nose in, then the quick turn back to the right to where you start to begin the descent all the way down to the Dunlop curve. So good defence, clean defence from Giotto, and the pressure from Scott Mulvin.
So can Mulvin find a way by? Plunge downhill now. If you're thinking about overtaking down at turn 8, start the move pretty much now on the run downhill to try and get track position. But Mulvin is, what, length? 2 lengths maybe too far back. Marciello, in the meantime, is getting away, but this is the fight for 11th. You see the Lumi rank showing the number of the position that the Aston occupies. Down through turn 8 they come, absolutely nose to tail. 2 big cars, though, these, as they now make the run up the hill once more towards the Michael Schumacher S's.
Yeah, they're both using V8s of different configurations. One is an Audi-based, one's a Mercedes-Benz based. So up the hill they come, and then it's back onto the brakes into RTL curve. Scott Marvin using lots of that curve, as he's fully entitled to do, and gets a good entry, good exit. Again, clean exit out of the bit curve, then dropping downhill through the Hudson back bogen, which is that sort of, well, it's almost not even a corner. You just flex your wrist muscles, and the car turns in up into this chicane, Vidal chicane, right on the rear wing now. Looks to think about making a move up the inside. Good pass, Scott Marvin. Thought about it, executed it, moves on.
Nicely done. Scott Mulvin through on the inside into 11th place. Still not quite good enough for the points, but he's got 20 minutes plus in which he can just about latch onto the tail, maybe, of somebody further up the road. And if Marciello can make progress, that might help to shuffle the order and make 1 or 2 people drop back into the clutches of Scott Mulvin, who a good few years ago was a Formula Ford gun before he turned his attention to GT4, GT3, now sim racing, and Scott doing a good job, as you've come to expect from the British driver. Luca Giotto, a very experienced single-seater racer before coming into GT also. He's the man behind. But Louis Delatraz leading still by only a gnat's crotchet from Ben Barnicoat. It's 0.8 of a second. It's a good touring car time, the gap last time over the line, 0.888. But it's Delatraz to Barnicoat with Souček in 3rd, keeping Monty at bay, David Perel 5th, and Ben Tusting still there in 6th place.
Now, either matching each other, Louis Delatraz and Ben Barnicoat over the last couple of laps, exactly the same times of 55.5, with Andy Souček and Romain Monti actually lapping faster than our leaders. Monti had a very slow lap a couple of laps ago, lost a second to Souček, but now is starting to claw back the disadvantage that he gave himself. I didn't see what happened, but it was a whole second in 1 lap, and now he's gaining 2/10 per lap. So he's got a lot of work to do to get back into that position of challenging the works Bentley.
Well, what I was about to say was that what we're seeing Delatraz do is precisely what he should do, and that is not to try and drive the wheels off the car to gain an advantage over Ben Barnicoat. It's to drive at a pace which is going to frustrate Ben Barnicoat. And the gap between 1st and 2nd has been hovering around 6/8 of a second lap on lap. The pace at the front clearly is slower than the 3rd and 4th Bentley battle going on. But that is unimportant. All that Delatraz has got to do is not offer up one opportunity to Ben Barnicoat to allow the McLaren to snick its nose up the inside and maybe find himself losing the lead, Barnicoat taking the lead. So That's what I call intelligent driving.
19 minutes remain of the SRO Esport GT Series here at the Nürburgring. It is a race being led by Louis Delatraz. Ben Barnicoat runs second, Andy Soucek third, and AC Milan's captain Alessio Romagnoli is the wild card, is doing a very impressive job in 22nd place with some very experienced drivers like Fabrizio Crestani, Nicholas Hillebrand, Michael Grenier, Jody Fannin, David Fuminelli, all behind him. So this has been an impressive run by Romagnoli, and he's not done yet.
David, I'm a really mean old gnarly guy.
This is where I say no, you're not.
No, Romagnoli's done a brilliant job as a sim driver. I want to see him in the real thing. Andrea Caldarelli, give him the keys. Let him have a go.
Would be interesting, would it not? So Romagnoli comes down towards turn one. He's actually closing on Diego Cassara ahead of him in the Audi. 21st, 22nd, these two are running. Ahead of the pair, incidentally, is Alessio Picariello, back out after his drive-through for causing the incident, in which he also came off pretty badly with a spin and some damage down at turn one. So on board with Romagnoli. Now, John, out of the Mercedes arena.
I mean, he's doing everything, I would say, wheel perfectly. His entry points, his exit points, lining up, coming down the hill, follow Cassara. I mean, what more can he do? He's in the zone right now. But of course, it's this issue of short straights, slow corners. I mean, what, 3 car lengths behind the Audi down the hill? He's not going to dive down the inside because there's no way to do it. The Audi covers it off anyway. The place that he might have an opportunity, we've seen overtakes taking place, is on the exit of the Vidal chicane up into that final curve. So, I mean, inexperience on the part of, I've lost his name now. Romagnoli is the only thing that might preclude him finding a way past the Audi.
Well, right now, this is the view that Louis Delatraz has. It is a clear road, and behind him, there's a little bit more daylight. Ben Barnicoat has dropped back a fraction. It's 11/10ths now between the two, and Louis Delatraz looking good up front as he comes down towards turn 8. We've had a win for Bentley, a win for Audi. And is it going to be a Porsche victory in the GPX Racing Gulf colours here for Louis Delatraz as he climbs the hill up towards the Schumacher S's?
What Ben Barnicoat can do, may have done, we don't know, is that he's realised I've been stuck behind the Porsche now for goodness, 7 or 8 further progress. I'm not doing myself any favours. If you just drop back 2 or 3 tenths a second, then you can pick up. I keep referring to momentum. The thing that stops drivers making progress is getting stalled out behind the car they're trying to pass. So drop back, regroup, start. We've got 16 minutes of this race. So maybe Ben Barnicoat has realised I'm not making any progress with what I'm currently doing. Start again.
Ben, you've been watching this. What's happening for Ben Barnicoat? Because it's really seesawing. It was 11/10ths. Now it's down to 6/10ths at the next sector.
It's very surprising. Louis Delatraz last time through did nearly a 54.9, just missed out by a fraction of a second. He lost half a second this last lap. Oh, as we see a Mercedes going very wide. Marcello up to 9th position, so picking up a bit more points now. But Delatraz is inconsistent. 54.9, now a 55.3. Barnicoat's done a 55.0 last time through, but did a 55.5 the lap before. Visibly, it's difficult to see where the time is being lost. But I think these fast chicanes, the blind crests, if you take a bit of caution, you end up with a lot of caution. And that is what is kind of seemingly catching them out. But it's very strange to see such inconsistency from pro drivers, which is, consistency is number one for them.
Yeah, and Louis Delatraz, certainly in Formula 2, as well as in his earlier single-seater days, has proved to be very, very impressive indeed, and has a good career ahead of him, one would have thought. So Ben Barnicoat, who is a very, very accomplished GT racer, he was a winner, wasn't he, in FIA Formula 3 when he was part of the Racing Steps Foundation before moving to be a McLaren factory driver. Ben, 8/10ths back at the start of this lap. We have done 23. We've got 14 minutes to go. Ben Constanduras rightly talked about Marciello, and there he was in the Mercedes, having got up past Ivan Pareras. Don't forget that Pareras there in the red Audi came into this race 4th in the championship, so he's dropping back, he's losing points. And here is Matt Samuel ahead of Arthur Rougier, who's another driver trying to recover from an incident right at the very start.
Well, Rougier was certainly one of the drivers in that sort of lead group that could have been further up through the field, but getting involved in issues. But really, just to think back about watching Raffaele Marciello coming through turns 6 and 7, making mistakes, but he always makes mistakes when he's on a charge. And the gap between first and second, it is seesawing. We don't know quite what the reasons for that are, but one thing, as I mentioned before, in the case of Ben Barnicoat, don't try and run under the rear wing of the Porsche for the entire race, because that's where you'll finish.
So 13 and a half minutes to go. Matt Samuel doing a good job here in the Aston, but of course here we're looking at 2 cars that have put weight on since they were at Spa, making the run now once more up towards the chicane, the completion of the lap, although already through, of course, have gone the race leaders. What we've not seen in this, apart from a few dramas on the opening lap, maybe you could put the Picariello crash into the mix, but we haven't seen quite the same mayhem that we had in the earlier 2 pro races, which suggests, Ben, that they're getting used to sim racing now, these real-world drivers.
Some of the guys are putting in 6 to 7 hours a day to practice and get up to speed with some of the pros, some of the pro sim drivers. They've seen the silver races, they've seen what's on offer. We had an AM competition yesterday as well as part of this SRO series. And, these pro drivers are competitive people. They want to be not just the best in this race, but they want to be able to fight with the sim drivers. And, in races to come across the next couple of months, I think we will start to see more of a mix with pros and silvers becoming, mixing into one race. And they don't want to be embarrassed, so they're putting in incredible commitment to being on pace. And I think that is what we're seeing here. It'll be very interesting to see. Well, I suppose we may not get a slick race, but if we did have the ability to compare, whether we would see similar lap times. Because remember, actually, at Spa, they were pretty close to lap times from both the pro and the silver race.
Scott
right
Marvin.
now. Go on, John.
Yeah, just listening to Ben there, but really Scott Marvin over the back of Pareras, coming down to climbing now up to the Vidal chicane, and thinks about diving up the inside, but wasn't sufficiently far alongside. Could maybe think about doing a pass. He made a great pass here a couple of laps ago, but again covered off by Pareras. Again, frustrating Scott Marvin with again the pace, but the momentum primarily. So now he's stuck on the exit of the final turn, running at the speed the Audi's doing, and Bentley picks up the advantage of not carrying 42 kilograms of weight. Well, there you see what that means, but he's on the wrong part of the racetrack. But he can make the undercut if he can get the bite, he can get the grip, he can get the traction, but the Audi still able to hold. Just hold on to that at 10th place. Runs wide, a bit wide coming out of turn 3, out of turn 2 into turn 3.
So Scott Marvin right on the back, just incidentally to catch up on penalties. Ben reported earlier Martin Kodrich had been in the pits. Well, he's got a 30-second stop-go penalty for causing a collision and also an unsafe release. So Martin Kodrich, if his day wasn't bad enough, it's about to get even worse, I'm afraid to say. Scott Marvin here looking for a place in the top 10, but Pareras keeping him at bay for the moment as they plunge downhill once again. Malvern not close enough to have a go here.
A battle for the lead, side by side for the lead of the race. Delatraz had made a huge error just a few moments ago, as we see Scott Malvern making an error as well. But side by side for the lead, Barnicoat trying to get down the inside of Delatraz.
Okay.
Didn't work. He's now 1.5 seconds behind.
Absolutely.
Still side by side. It's still side by side, and Barnicoat has made it through.
Okay.
Got a new leader.
Thanks for that, Ben. We're looking at Scott Malvern, but we'll try and get a replay of the lead change if we can in due course. Santamato then you're on board with in 12th place, but a new race leader. Ben Barnicoat it is up front, and Louis Delatraz 3/10 back. So what is going to be able to come from the Porsche now to fight back, having made a mistake? Delatraz falling behind Ben Barnicoat. That's the new order, as Ben Constanduros was explaining. So it is Ben Barnicoat in the lead of the race, down to second, Louis Delatraz, but it suggests, John, that Louis is not giving up. He wants that lead back. He's going to fight.
Well, that's all he's got left to do. I mean, he's got a car that's been dominant all evening, But Ben Barnicoat, we didn't see the pass. I suspect it happened into the final turn. What we saw was coming down into turn 1, at which point the McLaren was ahead of the Porsche. So Delatraz, having taken control from the opening lap into turn 1, now has got a different dynamic on his hands. Right now, I suspect that the pace that Ben Barnicoat has been able by catching up relative to the Porsche is going to be enough to keep him into the lead. 8 minutes or just under 9 minutes of the race remaining. Delatraz probably hasn't got an awful lot left in the tank, but of course, keep the pressure where you can. He's running every part of the racetrack, curbs all round, inside, outside, to try and drag the last tenths of a second out of the Porsche to get back into contention.
I mean, Ben has been reporting how Delatraz's laps were a bit yo-yo. He'd make the odd mistake and the gap would come down and then he'd regroup and pull away. That inconsistency. If now he can focus on the back of that McLaren, let's see what he can do. But of course, all this has happened late race, so he's running out of time. He's running out of laps here with just over 8 minutes on the clock. Ben Barnicoat leads the way then as he powers towards the chicane once more. Ben, who was second at Silverstone, and of course that was a incident-filled race for him because he got tangled up early on with Crestani, and now he leads the way as the two Bentleys for third and fourth are as one. Andy Soucek just ahead of Romain Monti as they come onto the pit straight, but Ben Barnicoat a second and a 27th as his two results leads here. Who's going to be third? Is it going to be Soucek? Is it going to be Monti in this inter-Nissan Bentley contest?
I think this is the battle that's probably going to go to the very end. You've got factory car, then independent run Bentley. They're looking to get onto the podium. I don't believe that Delatraz, other than if something unforeseen should happen to Ben Barnicoat, is going to make it back to what would be the top of the step on the victor's podium. I think the Porsche's pace is no longer sufficient to deal with the skill of Ben Barnicoat and the pace of the McLaren. The McLaren looks visually the quick in that battle for first and second.
I think you're right, and Ben Barnicoat doesn't often make mistakes either. Very, very good driver is Ben, so he leads the pack. There is Romain Monti in fourth spot, going after Andy Soucek for third and fourth. The Works livery ahead of the Bullet Racing Bentley. Bullet, the Stephen Patrick, Andy Merrick, Dave Price team. So, replay of exactly what happened to Delatraz to lose the lead. So this is coming out of the Mercedes arena. Porsche holds sway up to this point.
Yeah, the back of the car looks, you think it was crabbing as a visual effect. The car looked completely out of shape. It was not natural. So at this point, Delatraz has got the best part of a second of an advantage over Ben Barnicoat. So where the overtake occurred on this lap, this is a replay, not live, folks. This is a replay of that overtake, which will probably come, I suspect, as the cars would have exited out of the Vidal chicane up into Roma Curve. We have to wait and see. We didn't see it live. But this is the image that we're seeing. This is the replay prior to the overtake taking place. And
I think it's going to start here, isn't it, at the bottom of the hill? Oh, we now cut away from that and we go to Romain Monti. Right, okay. Tina's up there and we don't see it. So I think it started at the bottom of the hill and it finished at the chicane, from what I understand.
Yeah, I think that
Either
would be
way,
I guess.
Yeah, we've got Ben Barnicoat in the lead by half a second. And this is it. Delatraz is coming back at him, John, isn't he? Look at that underbraking.
Certainly did. I mean, where did that come from? I mean, Ben, wake up. What are you doing? You've got the advantage, you've got the speed, you've got 5 minutes and 45 seconds, and all of a sudden you've sort of offered up a gesture to Louis Delatraz and say, well, come on, let's make a race of it. It's boring leading on my own.
Well, Ben has had enough of staring at the back of the Porsche, so now he is doing his level best to not only lead the race, but fend off Louis Delatraz. Delatraz has not given up. Soucek is still doing a good job defending in that third place. Now, not Ben Barnicoat, Ben Constanduras is able to look at gaps here. Are the Bentleys getting any closer to this lead battle, Ben, or are they pretty much in no man's land behind in third and fourth?
Since Barnicoat's been in the lead, the pace actually has been faster than it had been when Delatraz was ahead.
Okay.
But Barnicoat definitely made a little mistake in that start of that lap, because as you saw, Delatraz right back on the tail, and Delatraz is very much the faster of the two now, and again they're side by side.
Okay, so we're on board with March Yellow. There is Delatraz on the outside line. Barnicoat runs it wide up the curb, goes off the road and back on again, but Delatraz will have to get the undercut outside line out of the S's. He wants the inside line for the next section of circuit, but Ben Barnicoat just scrabbles his way back in front as they make the run now down towards the Van Bogen through that fast right. Delatraz looking the quicker up towards the chicane then. Clouds looking a bit ominous overhead for the next race, aren't they, as they flick through the chicane. So Ben Barnicoat now has to go defensive. They're going to be able to squeeze 2, maybe 3 more laps out of the race. And now here they come onto the pit straight once again. Can Ben Barnicoat hang on to this advantage, or, John, can Delatraz do his demon late break going into turn 1?
Well, I mean, a complete surprise to me to see Ben Barnicoat being, whatever his problems are, that certainly we're unexpected again, down under braking. You can see Delatraz closes up to the rear of the McLaren. That's ordinarily what you would expect to see. It's on the exit of the corner. So these two cars covered what, by 2/10, 3/10 of a second, 4/10 if they came out of turn 1. Back this tight turn 3 frustration. So it's slow in, get the throttle open, then accelerate hard out of turn 4. Now Ben Barnicoat has got short straight before he comes down to the Valvoline curve. This is the first of these corners that leads ultimately to the lowest part. Delatraz, I mean, how close does he want to get? Because if he gets any closer, he again will fall into the same trap of getting too close, losing momentum. Barnicoat accelerates down the hill, pulls a little bit of a gap. Gap then once again shortens under brakes. McLaren accelerates, gets the benefit of the climb up the hill. Both cars running without any ballast. Down to the different technologies, down to the different driver skills. I would have said Ben Barnicoat should have had this done and dusted a long time ago. I don't know why or what his issues have been that he's allowed Delatraz to come back at him so quickly and aggressively.
It's almost like Louis Delatraz is better as the chaser than the chased, isn't he? He's got something to focus on here, whereas maybe in the
Story of my life, David. Story of my life.
Too much information, John. Louis Delatraz on this section seems to drop back a little. The perhaps more aero-friendly McLaren able to cut through the air on the run up towards the chicane. 2 more laps to run they will be able to do here. Looking at the clock, you're on board with Delatraz again. So 8/10 at the last sector. Brake turn into the old Coca-Cola curve. You've got the Nordschleife on the left. You've got the hotel on the outside of the road now. Race control and the media centre on the inside as they came past the pits. There it is as we look back from Ben Barnicoat onto his penultimate lap now, I reckon, looking at the clock. Down they go towards turn 1, and here comes Delatraz closing up again under braking.
Well, certainly the Porsche does appear to have a marginal advantage under braking, particularly into turn 1, but I don't really understand because both cars are probably pretty much equipped with very similar braking equipment, but Delatraz closes that gap in the first sort of third of the lap. So the gap when they came across the line had extended up to 9, almost a full second. But by the time they're going to get down to the lower parts of the circuit, that's going to be suddenly back up to, we're looking 5/10, so still 9/10. So up through this bit curve, then onto the second quickest part of the circuit.
And now, Ben, it seems that the pace is picking up. They both know they're running out of time. This is the moment. If you've got anything left in the tank or effectively in the rubber, now is the time to really push, isn't it?
I think this is the key thing right now, is that they are running way closer to the ultimate lap time than they were midway through the race. They were in the mid-55s in the middle part of the race. Okay, Delatraz's last lap at 55.8 with a mistake for sure, but they were in the 54s when Barnicoat first got ahead. And I think, by running that close to the limit, you're much more susceptible to making those small errors, to running a little bit wide over curbs, and that's where we've seen their mistakes creep in. But Delatraz faster on this lap again, but I'm not quite sure close enough.
But this is what we want from GT3, isn't it? Whether it's in the real world or the sim world, 2 young star drivers, 2 different brands, and they are leaving nothing on the table. It might only be a sim race, but each of these 2 really wants to win this. And now look, as they come onto the pit straight, we've got now less than a lap time left in the race, so this will be the last lap. This is pretty much Delatraz's last chance now to close up at the end of the straight.
Yes, down into turn 1, 0.6 of a second when they came across the line. Delatraz yet again closes that, almost halves that 0.6 of a second as they go into turn 1. So Ben Barnicoat will be having one eye looking forward, one eye in his mirror to see where is Delatraz making up all this ground. Why is the Porsche suddenly coming alive at this last lap, the last 5 minutes of this race? He's been under pressure, which in my view, once he's taken to consolidate and pull away very comfortably indeed. But the Porsche and Delatraz, they're back at the races. They've got maybe 1, maybe 2 chances on this final lap. Barnicoat will defend if his life depends upon it.
Of that, you can be assured. Ben can be a feisty driver when he needs to be. Big fan of, and has even raced in Brisker Formula 1 stock cars, so he's not afraid to get his elbows out. Through turn 8 he comes. Delatraz again, good on the brakes. That Porsche brings down the gap, but even if he gets right under the rear wing of that McLaren, he's got to find a way past. And Ben Barnicoat turns his way out of the Schumacher S's then, with Delatraz a little bit nearer once again. Lights are flashing as Delatraz feints to the inside line. Ben Barnicoat is still able to keep him at bay then as they go through left, through right. Half a lap to go in this third round of the SRO Esport GT Series. And it's McLaren versus Porsche, two great names of motorsport, and it's McLaren in charge as Ben Barnicoat leads the way. The gap at the last split was half a second, but I'm just not convinced Delatraz is going to get close enough to be able to have a go. He's going to have to hang everything out through the chicane, and even that doesn't help him, because as they get to the Coca-Cola curve, he does close up, but there's no gap. There's a tap in the tail. That's going to unsettle the McLaren on the dash to the flag. Who is it going to be as we wait to see? Ben Barnicoat, Louis Delatraz head up towards us. Is it going to be the McLaren to hang on in there? It's going to be a virtual dead heat between the two as they come across the line. But Ben Barnicoat does win by 0.07 of a second. Brilliant race. Louis Delatraz second. Andy Soucek takes third ahead of Romain Monti. David Perel fifth. And a really good sixth place for Ben Tusting. But 0.07 of a second. Splits the top two as you see Raffaele Marciello go home for eighth, just ahead of Alex Buncombe then at the end, and Scott Malvern into the top 10. And there's a car there that has ground to a halt on the pit straight. But 0.07 at the end of an hour of racing. John, that was proper, wasn't it?
Phenomenal finish. I mean, I didn't believe that Delatraz had anything remaining in the tank once he lost the lead, but he came back that last lap. And I mean, there was the lightest of contact with the McLaren and the Porsche coming into that final turn, but no gain, nothing lost. So 0.07 of a second, I mean, you can't even blink that quickly. Outstanding by both drivers.
Brilliant race. 0.07 split the two at the end of 32 laps of racing. In all the excitement of race positions, apologies, I didn't really concentrate overly on the championship. I'm sure Jack Nicholls has been computing all of this. It was, as we've been saying during the course of the hour, a very, very lively race indeed. Incidents aplenty. Not maybe the same mayhem that we had at Silverstone and at Spa. It was fierce racing. It was good racing. And Jack, that I think was seeing how the pro drivers have got used to sims and now are doing a really good job in the sim world.
Yeah, it was a really classy race, wasn't it, between Barnicoat and Louis Delatraz. And thank you for stitching me up. Happily, I have done some championship calculations.
You see, I had every faith.
Nah, I think you wanted me not to have done them personally, but we'll see. My calculations have Ben Barnicoat now at the top of the standings, 43 points for Barnicoat. Louis Delatraz now 9 points behind Barnicoat on 34. And I guess the big news for that, David, was Jordan Pepper, I suppose, and Luigi Di Lorenzo, the championship leader to a certain extent, because he didn't qualify well. He was outside of the top 10, but I thought maybe we'd see some progress from him. He wasn't able to, didn't score any points. But the scene was set for Pepper to take the lead of the championship today, and it all went awry at turn 1.
Yeah, although arguably it went awry even before that, Jack, in a sense, because yes, he was touched from behind, but you could argue that he shouldn't have been in second place anyway. You know, Louis Delatraz got a better start, put himself ahead down to turn 1. And that's when it started to unravel for Jordan Pepper. You're absolutely right. But if he'd have made a better start, it could have been Delatraz being tagged and having an incident. So, yeah, Jordan will have a think, I'm sure, about what he did at the start. And really, I think that's where it went wrong for him. But you're right, it was his race to win, really, and it gave us a very different result from what we expected.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it was his race to get a solid amount of points. I think that's the thing. It's such a drastic swing, isn't it? From potentially getting your 25 points, okay, you finish second or third, you're picking up 18 or 15, but to pick up 0 from that race is going to be tough. I guess the positive is, with the Bentleys not performing that strongly, he's not going to be too adversely affected for the next race.
Well, we got a Bentley third, didn't we? The Andy Soucek car.
Yeah,
so
it'll
get a little bit of weight. Barcelona isn't the hilliest of circuits, so I don't think it's going to be a massive problem there. I mean, what of course we don't raise the point again. We don't yet know where we're going to have the final round because that's not in our gift. If it's from all the fans a really hilly circuit and you do well in the next race at Barcelona, then you really are in stride for the last round. So that's another fascination, because the teams can't necessarily plan forward for that. As far as the championship goes, though, some hard luck stories as ever, some really good drives. Ben Tusting, just another cheer for Ben, another McLaren driver going well, but for somebody that's not really raced at this level in the real world or the sim world, I think he has once again been very impressive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a shout out as well to Andy Soucek, as you say, finishing third for Bentley. That is his first real strong performance. We've seen plenty of him fighting in the midfield, but it's certainly his first podium appearance of the season, and it's good to see Soucek and Bentley up there, because he's always a front runner in the real world. Very strong racer in the GT World Challenge America last year, and I think that deserves a bit of a shout out from Soucek.
Absolutely right. And Andy is a hugely experienced driver, and he's a great ambassador for Bentley. He's a nice bloke. You know, he's good to have within the championships, whether they're real world or sim. Another driver that made that graduation from winning in single-seater championships to GT racing. We're getting news about penalties. Raffaele Marciello being given a 5-second time penalty for contact with a car on the last lap of the race. So he is therefore going to drop down the order. So we'll confirm full results in due course. The stewards are still going to have a look at things. So if you go to the esports website in the next 24 hours or so, you'll get the final results. Right now, though, we're looking at how they qualified for the silver race. And that was on, Jack, a wet track, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. So it was a real challenge for these experienced sim racers, and I think that has mixed things up a little bit as well, because it's David Tanitza who has taken pole position, Eamon Murphy alongside him on the front row of the grid, and Arthur Kammerer in third. And in the context of the championship, David Tanitza is third in the standings. He's 4 points behind the joint leaders, Patrick Selva and Andrea Capoccia. But both of those struggled in qualifying. They're going to be starting on the same row, in fact, 19th and 20th for Selva and Capoccia, respectively. And the other one to keep an eye out in this is going to be Arthur Kammerer, because he's fifth in the championship at the moment, but only 7 points off Selva and Capoccia in the lead, and only 3 points away from David Tanitza. So I think title fight-wise, David, this is really going to be all eyes on Tanitza and Kammerer, because I think Selva and Capoccia have got their work cut out to score any points, I think.
All those remarks we made about Jordan Pepper, you can now cut paste for David Tanitza, can't you? Because here he is on pole position, third in the championship, clear road ahead of him on the run down to the first corner. This is his race to lose. This should be his win, his bag full of points for the championship. Arthur Kammerer starts one row back. And then, fascinatingly, you've got the two drivers jointly leading the championship side by side on the grid, much, much further back, namely on the 10th row. Patrick Selva 19th, Andrea Capoccia starting 20th. So they're starting outside the points. They've got to try and work their way through all of this traffic and keep out of trouble and score. While they're doing that, Tonzilla should be away up the road, I would have thought.
Yeah, he'll be hoping for that, won't he? Ben Constanduris will bring you on this. As our correspondent, when the qualifying took place in the wet, damp conditions, are we expecting similar for the race? And how? Well, actually, I've just seen a shot of I've just looked out the window, Ben. It's chucking it down.
It's definitely a lot wetter than they qualified in. They started the session in qualifying, some with slick tyres on, and it's just got wetter and wetter. And in the silver world of the SRO situation, it's just carried on raining. This is going to be horrible. There are plenty of guys out there who have no experience in driving in wet conditions, let alone driving in wet conditions on ACC. And this is going to be particularly hard for them to know where the grip is. You know, that's a thing that happens in the real world. Every single lap, it changes because the rain is falling, and they will be. I think it's only anything in sim world just seems to be emphasized, and I think this is going to be very hard to keep the cars facing in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because you might think in the sim world, why can't these drivers just go and practice in wet conditions? And you can, but it is adapting all the time. The track is getting wetter and drier and wetter at certain parts of the tracks and not other parts of the track. So it's not like you can just stick on the wet setting, get good in the wet, and then you're fine. Watty, were you good in the wet? Did you relish a wet day?
Every day, bring it on, man. But let me just point out, in qualifying, so-called wet conditions, how come they were only 2 seconds slower than the pro drivers? If it was wet, it was a new wet to me. But there, look at the racetrack. You can see just ahead of the front row of the grid, there is water there. I think that's virtually standing water. So we will see now. Look at the spray coming from the rear of the tires. This is wet conditions. What they had in qualifying was, little more than a spit in the racetrack.
Indeed. So the cars are away on their formation lap now. Then round three. Yeah.
Sorry, I think that's sleet.
Sleet? Wow, yeah.
I think that's sleet. That's so, the raindrops are so large and so white. I think we might have the typical Nürburgring weather, that we could actually get the snow plows out maybe before this race finishes.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see. I don't know if snow's in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but I guess we'll find out over the next hour. This is the race, the third round in the SRO Esport GT Series from the Nürburgring, and this is the silver class for the top line sim racers. The man on pole position is David Tonitza. He's a two-time F1 Esports champion, just to give you an idea of the quality of drivers we have in this field. Ben Constanduris is sheltering under some pit garage somewhere away from the pouring rain, and in the nice warm commentary booths are John Watson and David Addison.
Jack, thank you very much. It is time then to put your virtual anoraks on, virtual umbrellas going up all around the circuit. The temperature has noticeably dropped. It's chilling John's white wine, admittedly, but it is now getting quite chilly here at 7:05 local time at the Nürburgring. It's a properly wet circuit, and this is going to be fascinating. We've been wondering what the SRO GT Esports Series, the Assetto Corsa Competizione platform would look like if we got a wet race. Well, here we are. Prayers answered. The rain dance has come true for us. You're looking from onboard Tobias Pfeffer's car as they tiptoe their way around turn 8. Well, John, different set of circumstances now. It's not just about speed. It's also about some guile. It's about survival in these conditions.
It's going to be about how simulation is of the spray coming off the car that you're following. Now, we're not seeing a massive amount of water coming off the back on Tobias Pfeffer's car, so the 9th car is in New York in the McLaren. I mean, the track is fully wet, but it depends on the amount of visibility that those following, whoever will take the lead into turn 1, how much visibility they would have. In normal racing circumstances at Nürburgring, with rain or sleet or whatever it is of this weight, you would have great difficulty seeing very much other than literally 90 degrees from where you're sitting in the cockpit. Nonetheless, sitting at a sim, doing this race, having maybe never driven in a wet racetrack before, it's going to be entertaining. Very entertaining.
I don't disagree. Now, this might be a hospital pass, Ben, but for the real world, we talk about drivers that are wet weather specialists. Do drivers do a lot of racing in the wet on a sim, or is this relatively new to them?
Well, for many of the platforms that exist in the sim world over the last couple of years, they don't have a wet setting. They don't have rain.
Right.
It's kind of unique to Assetto Corsa Competizione. So perhaps people have done wet races in this platform, but I know some of the guys who specialize on other platforms and are kind of guests, a bit like Jack Keithley for Williams. He literally did his first wet race laps in qualifying a few moments ago. So 11th position, a great job from him.
Okay, right. There's one car. It is the Oshkan BMW, Furkan Oshkan's BMW that's in the pit lane. We are set to go racing then. It's round 3 of the Silver Series in the SRO Esport GT Series Championship for 2020. It is go. It is wet. It is Ferrari versus Porsche from the front row of the grid. David Tonitza just alongside Eamon Murphy. Eamon Murphy in the Porsche gets his nose in front on the outside line, but he can't get round the outside to grab the lead. He stands his ground. He's got the inside line for turn 2. Eamon Murphy tries to get the undercut. Does he do it? Yes, he does. The Porsche leads the way. Tonitza drops into second place. Arthur Camara is there in third. Luca Losio was trying to make a good start in the Porsche, but he's dropped back, I think, as they wriggle their way out of the Mercedes arena for the first time. John, that was good driving by Eamon Murphy.
Good driving. Oh, and contact but just on the exit of turn 4. But as you say, great driving by Eamon Murphy. Took the benefit of maybe a slightly apprehensive Tonitza coming through those opening corners, but got the Porsche into the lead again. In these conditions, that's the most valuable thing to do. Get away from any traffic around you. But a little bit of carnage on the exit of turn 4. The Bentley got rotated. That might have been Philippe Sima, I'm not sure, in the number 5 Bentley.
I think you might be right. We're getting a drive-through shown against the names of Arthur Camera and also Jack Keithley. I think Tobias Peffer was involved in that skirmish as well. But this is a really impressive opening lap by Eamon Murphy. The Irish driver leads the way then. 11th at Silverstone, the best that we've seen of him thus far up until this. Well, he seems to be, Ben, somebody able to adapt to the wet really easily.
I have a feeling he retired at a lap 1 at our first race at Silverstone, and the Porsche obviously works well around here, whether it be wet or dry. The car looks very settled. Arthur Camera, championship contender with a drive-through penalty, and he'll be in pit lane. That is going to be absolutely disastrous for his championship. And Jack Keithley up to 6th position now, and he is also heading for the pits too. Those will be automatic drive-throughs for cutting the track. Now, when you've got a car in front of you that's spun, sometimes you do have to cut the track to avoid contact. So race control can take a look at those and they can clear them if needed. And that's probably why Camera and Keithley are doing an extra lap. They'll have team managers, Williams team manager, for instance, will be on chat with race direction and will be able to address those situations for the driver whilst the driver focuses on race action. John, in terms of what you're seeing right now, those onboard shots, does it feel real to you? Because for me, it's pretty close.
Well, I know that you've done a lot of races in the wet, Ben, and you've probably got a good feel for it. But the reality is, on a wet racetrack, as we have right now at Nürburgring, oh, and another car is up, one of the McLarens getting turned around. It couldn't quite get the number, turned around again in the exit of turn 4. But the thing is, nobody here is using the offline in wet conditions, which is something the clever racers probably will want to use.
That McLaren that spun was Niels Neujoks, I think, who's not having a lot of luck in this series, the man that manages the Red Bull esports program. So he was 7th, but exit stage left. The race order, and it's going to change anyway because of penalties, never mind what's going on the track, is Eamon Murphy leading David Tonitza. Camera is 3rd, but then to inherit that place, it's going to be Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Rover liveried Porsche, because he will be next on the road. Jack Keithley comes through ahead of Jesus Cecilia in the Aston Martin. Philippe Simard runs 7th, and then the HWA Race Lab Mercedes of Tim Heinemann, GT4 racer and sim racer. He is in 8th place. There he is. HWA Race Lab that competes in FIA Formula 2 and Formula 3. It operates the customer racing program for Mercedes AMG, has done for a decade now. It also looks after the Mercedes-Benz EQ Formula E team and is earmarked to be taking part in Extreme E. HWA, of course, Hans-Werner Alfrecht's initials, the man that was behind the team and for many, many years behind the ITR that operated the DTM. So Tim Heinemann running in 7th place. Next train of cars through the chicane includes Giorgio Simonini, number 150. There he is in the Audi, running a little bit wide up onto the curb, coming out of the chicane, and now onto the pit straight as the rain continues to fall.
And David, I wonder if this race was the pro race in wet conditions, would we see a different style or technique of driving? I mentioned that when wet track conditions are prevalent, that often the quicker way around a corner is the long way around, in other words, off the racing line. All these sim drivers are driving the racetrack actually as if it was a dry track.
Yeah, John, I actually did dive into this game and do a bit of wet racing myself last week, and after we finished our our Spa race, and the wet line doesn't work. You know, it's something that works in karting, but it's not really simulated here. The grip isn't better offline and worse online like you would expect. So that's something still to work on in the sim world.
Yeah, Alberto Garcia and the Bentley got turned around just momentarily, so it's still a very, very busy, sort of almost messy mid-pack as cars are making their way around and down through. This is through the Valvoline, then down to the Ford curve, then dropping down the hill all the way down to turn 8, the Dunlop curve. And
one person we haven't seen yet is Andrea Capoccia, who won race 2 of our championship from Spa and was lost connection as he entered the race and therefore could not get into the race and therefore is a non-starter, which is a disaster in his championship.
I was just looking to see where he was. You've answered my question. You were reading my mind, Ben. So I accounted for Patrick Selva, the joint championship leader, who is 12th. That's an amazing job, I reckon. Bearing in mind he was 19th on the grid, so he's doing good progress nearly into the points. But Capoccia a non-starter. Looking here at Philippe Simard, just ahead of Tim Heinemann as they wriggle their way out of the chicane. Philippe Simard had a good run, did he not, at Silverstone in his Bentley. He was 10th there, and Tim Heinemann was quick last time out at Spa, but he did get a penalty, but he got the fastest lap of the race. So we know that Heinemann has got real world as well as dim world pace. 6:30 Lamborghini is Gregor Schill, and he comes up towards the timing line with the BMW behind him of Baba. So 17th and 18th, those two run as they go over the timing line. Camera, by the look of it, and Jack Keithley as well, now are in the pits, Ben, so those drive-throughs have stayed.
Oh, massively disappointing for those two. They were both running really well. Camera just coming back out into the track behind David Greco, so that is 40th position. Ouch.
Oh, he is going to need a lot of good luck, isn't he, to get anywhere near the order now. Alpha Camera, remember, was the man that won in a Mercedes the final at Monza in our charity event that kicked off the esports season. And from that, very quickly, a championship was spawned. Kamil Franchak goes through 8th for the Orange One FFF racing team in the Lamborghini, going after Danilo Santoro, another of the Lamborghini drivers. His for the Joanna Lacey Esports Academy squad, and right there behind them is Enzo Bonito, another experienced esports competitor. Sima, in the meantime, is keeping the HWA Race Lab Mercedes of Tim Heinemann at bay, and it's a Porsche leading the way from a Ferrari. Well, of course, Porsche dominated the first, 7/8 of the pro race, didn't take the race win, lost out by 700. That was a McLaren victory. Eamon Murphy really having the drive of the season as far as he is concerned. He leads the way on lap 4.
And in some respects, David, I would have to say Eamon Murphy taking the lead into turn 1, pulling out just under 1.5 seconds from what I would say was the more favoured Tunizia in the Ferrari, doing just the perfect job in less than perfect track conditions. He's got clear visibility. He's not being interfered with by any other cars that he's having to battle with. So he can do what we saw happen Delatraz do all the way through 7/8 of the race, had total control. Well, we've got 51 minutes plus on the clock, a long way yet to go, and a lot more can happen. Whether this racetrack is going to stay wet all the way through or whether it can change, that's another factor of sim racing. You can see just some cars going more offline. There is clearly more standing water when you go offline, so that's a no-no for these sim drivers to think about.
Out of the Mercedes arena comes this Italian brand battle. 7th, 8th, 9th. 8th in the midst is Kamil Franchak. There he is, keeping Enzo Bonito at bay. And whoops, big drama, because that was the Bentley getting all sideways. Santoro was delayed and cannoning across the road, clipping Franchak, and also Enzo Bonito getting involved in all of that. Philippe Simard, I think, was the one that started all of that in the Bentley getting sideways. Some benefited, others have come off badly.
And it all happens so quickly. The car suddenly is sideways and it's blocking the road, and those that are directly behind have got little space because there's somebody else on your left and probably somebody on your right as well. So very congested through turns 3 and 4 at the Nürburgring, as is ever the case. Now down the hill, and Basalva is in 9th position, just catching up with him as they accelerate up the hill out of the Dunlop curve.
One of the things you'll want to stay off of, I suppose, like real life, is the curbs. Incredibly greasy, and way even worse than the track itself. So if you think you can lean on the track, you definitely can't lean on the curbs. If you get forced off the curb like that, then you've got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, it doesn't appear. It doesn't appear that if you go and there's contact, because running the curb, actually that was running the painted white line, the definition line. So that is a case of where the curbs are slippery, but the painted white lines are probably even more slippery. And the car just certainly turned sharp right and off to the inside of the racetrack, and undoubtedly would have bounced off the barrier, hopefully get back to the pits.
Just to catch up on some of the mechanics of the game, as it were, having a wet line is useful if the track starts rubbered and then it gets wet. If the track starts wet with no rubber, drivers will prefer the standard line. Now, you're not going to see much spray from external cameras just because there's relatively little water quantity on the track from the way the graphics work, but you can see the spray on board. Heavier conditions, the spray can be massive. Right now, the conditions, you might not think it, but the conditions are set to be very light rain. And because we've got so many cars on track, the dry line is getting drier. I've got to say, on board, it still looks pretty wet and horrible.
Well, I don't see anything drying at all, but I've just run through a little rivulet as the cars made their way down through these sequence turns 6 and 7. So there is standing water offline, as most drivers in this race have done. They're following the traditional line around all the 16 turns here at Nürburgring. So if it is going to dry, it will be the racing line, but as yet I'm looking for that indication. Look at the way the headlights are reflecting off the wet. That's stunning. And that's real life.
Absolutely.
That's real life.
You cannot watch this and not be impressed by the graphics, can you? This is fantastic. On board with the BMW, Baba at the wheel in 14th position, powering his way up now from the bottom of the hill into the Schumacher S's. So we know about Capoccia being a non-starter. There was the Chicane BMW in the pit lane. Not sure if that got into the race or not. Ben, did we lose anybody else before the start? Any other drivers that failed to get in?
Husseini was another guy who visited the pits after one lap. So I'm not sure if he's back out onto circuit again, but another guy that we expect to see right at the head of the field. And Daniel Santoro as well now in pits. I think he was part of that collision that we saw a few moments ago.
So there's the race leader. That is Eamon Murphy. He has an advantage of 1.8 seconds over David Tonitza, which means he's getting away. And I refer, honourable gentlemen, to the comments made before the start of the race. It was Tonitza's race to lose, wasn't it? There he was, clear road ahead of him, pole position. He got mugged at the run to the first corner, and he's not being able to stay on the back of the Porsche unless he can do something really sparkling as the race wears on. Still got 47 minutes to go, but right now, as you look back at Enzo Bonito from Camille Franchak's car, Eamon Murphy is just extending that advantage little by little by little.
But David, Tonitza doesn't need to do anything more. He's in second place in the race.
Yes.
He's currently third place in the championship. All he has to do is pick up the points, and when the flag falls to end this race, he'll be in the lead of the championship. It would be nice to win because you've had pole position and you'd like to take fastest lap, but that's going to be available as well, but there's no point for fastest lap to my knowledge. All he needs to do is just follow in the wheel tracks of Murphy. Currently, 1.8 seconds behind the lead Porsche. And look, if you're wanting to win the championship, think about points. It's not just about winning the race. Think about where you can pick up points over the 5 rounds that comprise this championship.
Point taken. Let's see whether David Tonitza is going to settle for second place, whether he can close on Eamon Murphy and apply a bit of pressure late race. Right now, though, let's have a look at his teammate in the Hublot Ferrari, because that is the charging Enzo Bonito, who wants to get further up the order if he can and gain a place from Camille Franchak. Philippe Sima, recovering after his spin, has dropped back a place, hasn't he now, because he's fallen behind the Ufuk Baba BMW. There it is, almost Leighton House coloured, that, the Miami blue BMW. For 6th and 7th, though, it remains the Lamborghini. So Camille Franchak staying ahead of Enzo Bonito here, but the 488 GT3, the Ferrari, right on the tail of the Lamborghini as they come now over the timing line. The leaden clouds hang over the circuit down towards turn 1 into the Mercedes arena they go. Ferrari closing up under braking, and now Bonito has to get it slowed down and make sure he's got some grip.
Yeah, it's easy to overrun into turn 1 because it's a downhill. You've got that little dip. It's a very nasty little part of the racetrack, an area that catches out so many people. And in these conditions, it is about being sensible and cautious. Lamborghini takes sort of an unusual approach to turn 3, gets it all back, runs the curb on the inside of turn 4. Everybody way wide on the exit of 4. And basically, situation unchanged. 6-0 has changed.
So Franchak doing a good job here of maintaining 6th place. Drops down the hill. And also to prove how realistic Assetto Corsa Competizione is, if somebody has wet tyres, the drying line can be very aggressive in terms of the friction and tyre temperature. So some drivers already going for the wetter parts of the circuit in a straight line to keep the tyres from overheating. So there's that in the game as well. I don't believe anybody has thought about going onto slicks for this. They've chosen wets. If they've got the Pirelli sticker on the side. They are slick. So if you see anybody with that, they're very brave. And I don't think anybody has started with that. Everybody on wet tyres. But just so you're aware of the difference, if it's the solid black sidewalk, it's a wet. If it's got the Pirelli sticker, it is a slick.
If anybody's on slicks right now, they deserve something more than winning this race, because these track conditions and the ambient temperature on top of all that would be absolute. I mean, who is the greatest wet weather race driver that we've ever known? Well, even he couldn't. And there you go. There's an example. Even on slicks. Yeah, well, even on slicks, getting caught out, coming through that Vidal chicane, makes an error, loses a position, and all the good work that's been done has been undone. Just maybe a little bit of too much speed. Oh, and that's contact with the back of the Mercedes, I would say clearly from here, but need to have a review of it. But the Aston certainly looked to me to get back into the back of the Mercedes at the exit of the Vidal chicane.
Christian Kwiatkowski shoveled out of the way in the SRO Motorsports car, so he's gone. And as the drivers come through, Bonito on his wet tyres making that mistake, going off the road, dropping him back to 8th. So Patrick Selva, the joint championship leader coming into this race, is up into 7th place, number 969 McLaren. Patrick Selva doing a very impressive job indeed. And right now you're looking at what's going on lower down the order. Number 22 there is the recovering Kwiatkowski. Through he goes, and the Mercedes that was ahead of him, having been shoveled out of the way, Kwiatkowski comes out of the Mercedes arena and blasts downhill once more.
David, just interesting that Selva's made that progress in the McLaren, because Tunitsa has been, I say, consolidating his second place, thinking of the championship. But if we see further progress from Selva, if he does manage to get up into 4th or 3rd position, that then would probably swing the points lead in the championship more in favour of Selva. But he's still got a lot of work to do, and he's basically about 14 seconds behind getting into 4th place, let alone putting any pressure on Tunitsa currently, and for this entire race in 2nd.
Agreed. But with just under 42 minutes to go,
it's all doable.
Selva can have a go. Yeah, he's not done, is he?
No, I mean, for Selva particularly, as long as he can clear those cars directly ahead of him quickly and cleanly, then he can put pressure on Tunitsa, who would be, in my view, the person who will walk away from this weekend as the championship leader.
Adam Pinchas there for the HWA Race Lab, just losing out to the BMW with Barber ahead of him. Now, Ben, something else that we might see on an onboard is drivers now starting to move their hands around, because they can change traction control, can't they? They can play with ABS and brake bias as well with these conditions. Perhaps if they change as well lap by lap.
And they are changing lap by lap in terms of the conditions evolving. We saw some really good fast laps in the very early 2 minutes. So 2 minute 1.1 a couple of laps ago for Eamon Murphy. He's now dropped down to 2 minute 2.3, so over a second slower than his ultimate pace, meaning perhaps that the tyres have lost a little bit of their grip, but also that the track conditions perhaps are worsening. For me, though, I feel like I can see a little bit of a dry line. Therefore, those tyres perhaps will be overheating. Inside the car, you probably don't see it on this graphic, but inside the car, the drivers will see the temperatures of each of their tyres split into bands, inside, middle and out, and so they'll be able to see if the tyres are overheating by going into the red zone or staying in the green zone, which is good. They'll be able to manage that by getting offline and cooling them down. But then every time the hand comes off the steering wheel, they are either changing brake bias, ABS settings or traction control settings, and they can change the map as well, the engine map for fuel efficiency, but I don't think we need to do that in this particular race.
Ben, I'm just looking at the racetrack and I'm struggling to see any indication of a drying line. Can you tell me which part of the racetrack you're seeing it? And secondly, Eamon Murphy has pulled out a gap. He's now got it up to just under 3 seconds. Certainly whatever his race pace is, and you say he dropped off his best lap, but he's still pulling away from Tunitsa in 2nd place.
Just thinking about weather as well, we know that the settings are for light to medium rain. Well, the experts about this say that slicks or wets will work in these conditions. If it's heavy rain, obviously it's got to be a wet, but it's certainly not worth making a pit stop, because it's effectively 1 minute that you lose. 30 seconds set into the game to change the tyres and 30 seconds of drive time down the pit lane. So really, you've got to try and brave it out on whatever you've gone for in the beginning. As you look at the back of the Patrick Selva McLaren from Enzo Benito's point of view, Axel Petit closing up as well. But whether or not we can go into the game and see if anybody has been bold enough to start on slicks, Ben, you'll have a better idea than me. Right now, to my eye, it looks as though everyone has gone wet. But if it is drying up, they're just going to have to persevere. Losing a minute would be very bad news indeed in terms of making that pit stop, wouldn't it?
But there is the danger of ripping your tyres so much apart that you then get a puncture. So
yes.
If it really calls for it, then you're going to have to take that plunge. And perhaps if you're outside the top 10 positions, then it is a risk worth taking. The forecast for the full race, and something that the drivers will know, is that it should be consistent light to medium rain throughout the whole race. So it's only that the cars circulating would be drying it up, nothing else.
I mean, I don't know quite what we're discussing here, because to me the racetrack is wet, regardless of what we're hypothesizing about. If anybody started on slicks, they were nuts, frankly, because the racetrack was wet, the racetrack is cold. You know, if you want to make a wet race, and I'm in favor of wet races, let mandate that everybody has to start on a wet tire, and if it's a dry racetrack, mandate you start on a dry tire. Don't provide the option. And then we get around this question of, has somebody rolled the dice? I mean, I've raced in conditions like this and these temperatures, and I one time did a Grand Prix, and my boss said, let's gamble, John, let's have a gamble. And I said, what have we got to lose? Well, we lost a bunch. That's what you're going to lose.
Sometimes you can be the hero, sometimes it doesn't work out. Good battle here, as you see Giorgio Simonini ahead of Ufuk Baba, the Turkish driver in the BMW. This little battle, however, is now number 95, David Tonitza, who is down in third, is he not? Because Jesus Cecilia has just gone past him. So Cecilia, there, number 15 in the Aston Martin, up into second place. So Tonitza, pole, loses the lead. Now he's lost second place as well. Further back, Simonini versus Baba down towards turn one. Adam Pinchis next up in the Mercedes, and Baba in the BM had the line, but then the tail wagged as he got on the power coming up to turn two.
Yeah, he tried to get on the gas a little bit too early, just to go back again. I'm watching these timing and scorings. The lead has now extended up to 4.2 seconds. Of course, that overtake with Tonitza falling back into third place has contributed to that. But it's giving Eamon Murphy, I mean, the day of his life.
So Eamon Murphy's advantage then growing all the time, helped by that battle for second spot, because as they argue, so they delay one another. Down the hill goes Ufuk Baba once more, wanting to break into the points. So the number 86 BMW, there it is. Ufuk's had a 39th and a 27th as his two results thus far. And here he is in 11th place. So going really well here, right on the back of the Audi. Remember that the Audi is a heavy car for the purposes of the silver race here. Winning last time out at Spa, so therefore it carries 25 kilos, 17 on the Lexus, although we don't actually have Hani Al-Sabti, who was second at Spa, and then 10 on the Lamborghinis. So that's how the weight balance, the weight distribution for success goes coming into the silver race here. So 155, Enzo Benito under attack. He's got a Lexus behind him, which is the car of Axel Petit, and as I've just said, that's got an extra 17 kilos thanks to Al-Sabti's result at Spa.
One of the factors in a wet race is that the weight penalty that you're carrying probably has less effect than the other effects, i.e. a wet racetrack, and you parts of the racetrack being wetter than others. As we look to see Benito, can he make a pass? And Salva, can he just about hold it? It's very, very tight. Salva was the wider of the two in turn one, which gives him the upper ground when he goes into turn two. So these two have been pushing, shoving literally all the way around the racetrack. Benito thinks he can make a move up into turn three, very tight indeed. Salva gives him the mo. I thought he'd given him enough room, but he got the back end of the McLaren step out, and that's bad news for Salva, good news for Benito.
So Salva, 19th, he started, was 7th, slips back down to 8th. He might lose another place if he's not careful, because he's got Petit crawling all over the back of him. Axel Petit, you're riding with him here then, the French driver in the Tech 1 Racing livery Lexus, staring at the back of Patrick Selva, the man that won dominantly at Silverstone, left everybody else squabbling behind him. He just drove away from the opposition. 34 minutes on the clock, Porsche leading the way. Eamon Murphy, the Irishman, ahead of Spaniard Jesus Cecilia, and then David Tonitza down in third spot right now.
Interesting just to see Cecilia now that he's gotten into second place. The gap between first around just under 4.5 seconds. Now that Cecilia has got that place, he can now focus on the Porsche directly ahead. Was he going to make any headway into that advantage that Porsche has had all the way through?
So Axel Petit on board, still chasing Patrick Selva. It looks wet here, or wetter. I think that's part of the spray coming onto the windscreen, but absolutely. Through they turn, up towards the chicane. But Petit not close enough there to have a go as they turn into the corner. While all this is going on, incidentally, HWA Race Lab, which is operating Tim Heinemann's car in fourth place, is running a sim racing bingo on Instagram, which you can watch parallel to the live stream. So if you fancy having a go to Instagram, have a look for HWA Race Lab sim racing bingo. Whatever next.
David, what house, which is what you say when you won bingo, is that right?
It is what you shout, yes. So
Hoos. It's actually Hoos.
Just looking at this fight between Petit and Selva. Contact between the two. The McLaren through on the inside again. So Patrick Selva getting roughed up a little bit now. But Axel Petit here, John, in the Lexus, having a really, really strong race to try and get himself up the order.
I mean, all but past the Lexus through the complex. That is turns 1 through to 4. Clearly has got the pace. Could run quicker than Selva's doing in the McLaren, but as the same story at Nürburgring, same story at Spa, same story at Silverstone. Where can you make that overtake? The run down the hill, always a sort of an obvious place, but it's very easy covered and defended. So you have to be sensible and thoughtful, not make it here. Build now. This is where you can do your good work. The Lexus looks stronger on the exit of the Dunlop curve than the McLaren did.
So this is Petit's view. More and more spray on the windscreen. Wiper working overtime. Heads now up towards the midpoint of the lap. And looking back from Patrick Selva's car, you can see not only how close the Lexus is, but what's kicking off behind, where Ufuk Baba runs wide, goes off the road in his efforts to get past Simonini for 10th place, and the Audi is still 10th, therefore, as they come back into view. Now, one car that was well placed on the grid, but has fallen a long way back, is Luca Losio, number 28 Porsche. He was 4th on the grid and has plunged down the order. And one reason for this, Ben, is I understand that he is on slick tyres.
It looks like it. He has chosen the slick tyres. Now, the reason for that, and graphically you're seeing one thing, but physically they've inputted 30% rain and 30% wet track. So that's not actually a huge amount, you know, in comparison to going up to thunderstorm level. 30% rain, 100% rain is thunderstorms and craziness. We've also got 20 degrees track temperature and 20 degrees air temperature, which will accelerate the drying process as well. So this really is, as much as I understand Watty looking at it and going, well, there's rain falling from the sky, it must be really wet. Actually, what they're feeling is something quite different and not a very wet track, and that's why Losio went for the slick tyre, but it's not worked for him as yet.
Well, you may say something different because a wet track is a wet track, and the ambient temperature and the track temperature are abnormally high, in my opinion, for this time of year at Nürburgring in these conditions. But this is a sim race. We're not running a real race. But what is real right now, that Eamon Murphy has been cut from over 4 seconds, just under 4.5 seconds, to now under 3.5 seconds. And as I suggested, Cecilia in the second place is making, than the Aston Martin, strong progress towards the front with less than 30 minutes to go.
Absolutely right. There is Axel Petit still pushing on behind Patrick Selva. But now that Enzo Benito has got up and past them, he's disappearing up the road, isn't he? So Selva is having to go into defence mode here as he tiptoes down the hill. Axel Petit right there behind him in the Lexus, and he's having his best showing really of the championship thus far, with a 23rd and a 25th as his two results. Tries one side, slots back in behind, can't get past the McLaren there. So once again, flick through the chicane. Eamon Murphy's advantage, 2.6 seconds. Still looking good up front. The next thing for Ben to have a look at is... Go on, John.
2.6 seconds and falling. That was 3.3 seconds a lap ago.
Yeah, I was just about to say, the next thing for Ben, if he can do so, is to have a look at lap times, not only Cecilia, but also to see whether Tonitza is closing, back in third place.
Last lap, Murphy did a 3.6, Cecilia did a 2.6, and Tonitza did a 5. I think these guys are starting to really struggle with tyres.
Well, Petit almost got through. He actually had a nose ahead of Salva, and they've been bumping as being the Dodgem cars done in Bogner. And still side by side through turn 3.
They're not done yet, are they? So Petit has the line. Selva tries to brave it out on the outside, but the Lexus goes by then. Even though it's got a bit more weight for this race, in the wet, it's not affecting it as much as it would in the dry. So Axel Petit goes through, up into 8th place now. And Patrick Selva, of course, yes, he's losing places, but significantly, he's losing points within the championship, because having been 7th, he's now down to 9th. Not looking quite so promising now.
No, it's not. The progress that I thought we might have seen has been backwards rather than forwards. So he is almost on the cusp of falling out of the points. And good work by Petit in the Lexus to get that car through. It looked the quicker of the two cars over the 5 laps. And he found the opportunity. He sort of bullied it out all the way through turns 1 to turn 4. So one way, then the other way. Good driving, good thinking, principally working it out and not making an error.
So there is Enzo Benito, 6th place, but the man that's currently in 2nd spot, Jesus Cecilia, is becoming the driver to keep an eye to now. He started 8th, he's running 2nd, he's closing on the leader. The Aston Martin, we know, is a good, well-balanced car on a damp circuit, and Cecilia proving that as he makes his way closer to the Porsche. Is the Porsche an easy car to drive in the wet compared to the Aston? Discuss.
Well, I think in these conditions, they've each got their own characteristics. Hold on, maybe, Ben, do you think the Aston could be on slicks? Is that why it's going quicker than the Porsche?
There's only one.
Yeah, Lossier is the only one that we know of that's been gambled on the slicks. So right now it's down to Cecilia's ability and the Aston as a car, and the setup. He is closing on Murphy. This is Simonini's view, running in 10th place, and therefore the last driver in the points at the moment.
Again, you just see how difficult. Oh, back end snapped out very quickly on Simonini in the Audi, and very good, lucky to not let that car get off racetrack. The barrier is not that far away, so he has lost position on Baba as a consequence. That one little error in turn 2 caused that gap between the BMW and the Audi to probably double in the space of what was a few meters. And Baba, he's getting very racy, going past Salva. Salva is struggling in these conditions big time.
Yeah, Ben, I thought about this. What's going on as far as Salva is concerned? Because he's losing places, and we know he's good because he made progress early on. What do we put this down to, I wonder?
Personally, it's down to how much you've used your tyres early on in the race. If they're wet tyres, you're going to lose a huge amount of performance if you've taken a lot out of them.
Okay.
And if you've saved them, if you've been able to manage the temperatures and get offline and cool them, then you'll have more performance out of them. And just perhaps, but having to push so hard in those early laps has meant that he now doesn't have any grip left. A 2:05.7, it was a poor lap.
And push he had to do because he was 19th on the grid, as we say, got up to 7th and is now dropping. Now this is for the lead. Half a second between Eamon Murphy and Jesus Cecilia at the last split. It's just got up to 6/10, but with 25 minutes of the race to go, Jesus Cecilia is doing a mighty job here. And Ben, these are two drivers that haven't really sparkled in the previous races in the championship.
Two marks that we haven't really seen at the sharp end either. Porsche and Aston Martin haven't certainly starred in the first couple of rounds. They're ballast free, which is helping them, but so is the some of the other marks that like the Mercedes, for instance, and we're not seeing any performance from Mercedes. McLaren are nowhere either, but there will be cars, like in the real world, that are better in wet conditions than in dry.
Well, lower down the order, Chris Sever is doing his best to try and gain ground. But he's dropped a place, I think, as he comes up to the line. He was squabbling with Andre Franca. Franca goes 16th, Chris Sever in the Black Hawk racing car drops back into 17th spot now as they head down to turn 1. So 24 minutes on the clock, but the way that Cecilia is going in second place is impressive. And now it's game on for the race lead, isn't it? Nose to tail as they make the run up the hill here.
Yeah, he was a little bit maybe greedy, thinking he could slip up the inside of the Porsche down at Dunlop Curve, and consequently the gap has marginally opened again. But the speed of Cecilia, the speed of the Aston Martin, has been pretty clear to me that he's just literally taken lumps out of Eamon Murphy's advantage over the last, 5-6 laps. And we're now at a position where the battle of this race is going to continue on. Same as we saw in the Pro race, you catch. Took Ben Barnicoat a long time to find a way through Delatraz. Will that be the same with Cecilia and Murphy in track conditions, which of course are entirely different? So earlier.
The other fascination in all of this is Tonitza, who is absolutely nowhere. Remember, he was on pole, he lost the lead, he lost second, and he's dropping further and further away from the top two. Might even lose his third place by the end, but here come the race leaders with barely a length separating them as they break the beam. This time it's 0.347 of a second. Eamon Murphy in the Porsche, 23 minutes to go. He is going to be very busy if he's able to defend for another 23 minutes, because right there behind him, you're on board now, Jesus Cecilia in the Aston Martin. Nose to tail, we start lap 19 here at the Nürburgring.
It's important that Eamon Murphy just makes every corner wheel perfect. Get your apexes, get your exits, get your braking zones. Don't try and drive away, because you don't actually have the pace that Cecilia and the Aston Martin. But what you can do is the same old story, pursued and the pursuer. You get to a particular zone, and if I was in the lead of this race, I would be doing everything possible to spoil Cecilia's opportunity, to frustrate him, make him a bit mad, make him want to do something that might be not the rational choice.
Ignore the car that's third on the road. That McLaren is a lap down as they drop into the turn 8 right-hander now. Plunge downhill, careful with the braking because of the water on the road. The Porsche with a slightly greater advantage maybe as they come up the hill. Yes, 3/10 at the start of the lap, 6/10 now is the margin between the top two. But equally, 22 minutes of the race to go. Jesus Cecilia still doing a good job.
The McLaren, the third car in this chain of cars, actually is the quickest of these. And I just wonder, it's not considered good etiquette to unlap yourself when the battle of the two cars that are directly ahead of you are those that are fighting for the race lead. Nevertheless, the pace of the McLaren is, I think, interesting.
It is, isn't it? Makes you wonder why it's a lap down if it's got this good pace. However, for the race lead, Cecilia now makes his move, closes up towards the chicane. Through they turn, left, right, ride the curb. Both of them taking a huge bite out of the middle. Porsche goes wide. Cecilia up the inside line into the Coca-Cola curve. Job done.
Yeah,
Eamon Murphy making a mistake, and he left that door wide open.
Yeah, he got the left side of the Porsche on the curb. The back end snapped. He had to get out of the throttle. Easily seen and read by Cecilia. He did absolutely the perfect overtake. He applied the pressure. He got the result that he wanted, and he just then placed the Aston Martin up the inside into the final turn, and as easy as you like. And that's the way you want to make a pass. You want to force your competitor into the error. I thought it might have been Murphy trying to force Cecilia to make an over-eager pass. But now the pass has been made. Cecilia, clear air, going to drive away. And now Murphy's got to contend with the back marker, McLaren, getting into the mix outside of the points, outside of the overall positions. But nevertheless, it's a frustration.
Yeah, that McLaren is off a camera who had a drive-through, remember, early on. So that's why he's got the pace. And a drive-through coming for Tim Heinemann. In fourth place, the HWA Race Lab Mercedes, fourth. He had a penalty, did he not, at Spa, and Heinemann is getting a drive-through for causing a collision with number 9, Philippe Sima, early in the race at turn 3. So Tim Heinemann, I'm afraid, the HWA car is about to have to serve a drive-through penalty.
And just talking about Arthur Camara, his pace is the best in the race. He's doing 2:02.1s, and our leaders are in the 4s and 5s. So whether he changed his tyres and did 2 pit stops, I'm not entirely sure, but he's down in 29th position. There will be no points for that. But his pace, he is one of the fastest cars on track. another one who's doing an amazing job, also got a drive-through penalty early doors, was Jack Keithley. He's up to 13th now, and he's still running in the 202s.
Well, Tim Heineman's drive-through is going to throw him out of the order, isn't it? Eamon Murphy now busy defending effectively from Arthur Camera. He might as well let him go, really, because he's wasting more time, isn't he, by defending?
David, I mean, it's as clear as mud. He's now let the McLaren go because there's no point in keeping it behind. The car, we could see it 2 or 3 laps earlier, that the car was the quickest car, was catching to the back of the Aston, then the back of the Porsche. So just let Camera go, and he will make his way up to the back of the Aston Martin, and he may well pass the Aston Martin. But since it's so far out of position, it's irrelevant. So don't get involved in battles which have nothing to do with you.
Over the timing line, Enzo Benito with the ever-improving Axel Petit right there behind him, and that Lexus lines up for a dive down on the inside line. Petit will go through. He's going to gain another place when Heinemann says he's drive through anyway. So Axel Petit having a really impressive run here compared to what we've seen in earlier rounds of the championship. And Bonito, interestingly now, a bit like Tonizza's Ferrari, seems to be fading as the race wears on, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the combination of a mid-engine GT car against a front mid-engine GT car. The Lexus, of course, its engine's ahead of the driver. The Ferrari is directly behind the driver. But sometimes that old-fashioned mid-engine, front-engine layout, which is what the Aston Martin has got, in certain conditions, just really come alive. So we're seeing a great run from the Lexus, a stunning run from the Aston Martin. What we're really missing is Heinemann, who's gone into the pits. He was the lead of the Mercedes again, another mid-front engine car.
Yeah, so Heinemann will have to give up that 4th place. Now look at Bonito. Not only has he lost a place, look, he's been absolutely reeled in by Ufuk Baba in the BMW, who's another driver having a mighty impressive run today. And Baba 8th, right on the tail of the Ferrari, which is really struggling now compared to what you might have anticipated out of this car.
And funnily enough, it's another front mid-engine car.
Indeed so. And Ben, as we've seen in the past, Enzo Benito is no dummy in esports, is he?
No, absolutely not. Enzo Benito now is part of the Ferrari's Formula One team driver, and previous to that, he was McLaren esports driver, and previous to that, he won the Race of Champions and allowed himself actually 2 years worth of competing against real world drivers on a Race of Champions track. He actually beat Lucas de Grassi doing that last time in Mexico. So he's actually very talented both in the real world as well as the virtual. I think he came 2nd or 3rd in a real single-seater championship in Italy this last year.
Well, right now, he's losing places. He almost has to wave goodbye as Baba drives past him. So Ufuk Baba now goes up into 7th place. And there was just nothing there, John, that Ferrari had by way of a fight.
No, I mean, basically, we've seen now the Aston Martin, the Lexus and the BMW just pretty much mug the Ferraris around the racetrack. They've just got the balance. They've got the additional bit of grip. I don't know what it is, whether it is overuse of the tyre in the early part of the race. I suspect it's something to do with the lack of grip, whether it's at the back under traction or whether the front end's given up. Whatever it is, the pace of the Ferrari, and in particular what we're watching right now with Benito, it ain't there. It isn't there any longer. 15 minutes and so of this race remaining, and the gap between first and second now up to 4.5 seconds. Tonizza's dropped back to 13.8 seconds in 3rd place behind Murphy. So Tonizza consolidating as best he can. But right now, it's a race for old-school mechanical layouts.
But Bonito's Ferrari is looking like a bit of a sitting duck, isn't it? He's 8 seconds clear of Selva, so he should be able to survive. But it does rather look as though it's get up and go, got up and went. There's just nothing that car has got anymore. No poise, it's not on its toes, and it looks thoroughly defeated. You've seen the ease with which Petit and then Baba caught past, pulled away from. Now, Ben Constantouris, his other star of this race, Jack Keithley, is about to break into the top 10. He's on the outside line here after a drive-through. And Jack, having the best we've seen out of him this season, is certainly not giving up. He's got the inside line as they dive through the right-hander. The big Bentley against the heavier Audi, side by side. Jack Keithley then tries to get the drag as they come towards the Ad Van Bogen, then up the hill. Has he got the grunt in a straight line? Well, he's going to be on the outside line for the first part of the chicane, the inside for the second part, and it's the Audi that just hangs on. Great racing, though.
What might have been for Jack Keithley, drive-through penalty from cutting the track on lap 1. Oh, the Audi goes very deep, so does the Bentley. A bit of argy-bargy on the exit. At least he's got the inside line this time for the next braking zone. But Jack is an expert not in this platform. He doesn't do very much in this platform. He's a Williams eSports driver on other platforms where he is king. But first time in wet racing, first time in the wet on ACC, very little experience. And he is one of the guys lapping the fastest. A 3:44 last time through. Oh, that's for Ufak Barber. Jack's lap time was a bit slower, but yes, the BMW is the fastest car out on track right now and up to 6th.
Yeah, he's gained another place, hasn't he, because of the way that we've lost Tim Heinemann from the race. Remember, Heinemann had a drive-through. He didn't serve it, so he has been disqualified. So Tim Heinemann has been excluded for not serving the drive-through. Here, you've got Simonini under attack because the Bentley there goes through on the inside line. Now that, number 13, is Josh Martin. I think he is a lap down, isn't he? Because he's not featuring in the order. We understand from Eamon Murphy's engineer that he's struggling a little bit and he can't do anything about the Aston Martin. That gap's up to 6 seconds now. So 6 seconds between the top two. Simonini, there he is, in 10th place. But Jack Keighley, 9th, and I reckon he's going to get another place off Selva before the end. But John, on board this BMW now, Ufuk Barber reeling in Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Porsche, and a move is on here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Just coming up into the chicane, gets the pace. Now, the only thing is he's on the outside, but he's got, I think, well, he has clearly gone through. The Porsche just backed out of it, didn't want to know about having any confrontation coming into the chicane. So that was an easy pass for Barber to make. And again, I don't know why suddenly the Aston Martin, the BMW, the Lexus, all in the top 6 are all running at the pace they're doing, but they have turned out to be, those 3 marks, the class of this wet field here with 12 minutes remaining.
Yeah, just as Eamon Murphy's losing touch with Cecilia, there Dietrich's Porsche, Ben, another one losing time, and all of a sudden Enzo Benito might be able to gain a place because by default the Ferrari is closer to the Porsche.
And has anybody noticed how dark it's getting?
It is getting darker, you're right. Go on, Ben.
Dietrich lost 2 positions on that last lap. He lost 4 seconds. So at the start of the lap, it was Petit who slid by. Then Barber, as you say, there's no chance he's going to be able to hold on. And as John described, he's a defeated man. He didn't even put up a fight to Barber. I think he knows that Porsche has used its wet tyres.
So he's struggling, isn't he? He's sideways again there. Bonito is creeping up into the mix. We are at nearly 5 minutes to 8 it is now, local time here at a simulated Nürburgring. And as John rightly says, it is getting darker and gloomier and colder and wetter. Proper Nürburgring, John.
I mean, I just have to repeat what I've been saying earlier. It's very difficult to believe this isn't a live motor race because everything is replicating precisely what it would be like at Nürburgring. You can see the background. The rain falling, it's beginning to be typical Nürburgring. You can't see your hand in front of your face. It's getting darker. You can see the lights reflecting off the racetrack. This is real racing. I mean, I think it's unbelievable.
Well, you're on board with Jan-Marcel Dietrich, and this is becoming an increasingly recalcitrant Porsche to hustle around, isn't it? Let's ride with him, John. Talk us around.
Okay, he's making his way up to the chicane. This is the big break on the racetrack apart from at turn 1. Rides the curb a little bit on the inside. Oh, the car bobbles around, needs to stay off the curb on the left because that can catch you out. Then gets the nose of the car in for turn 18, turn 16 on this lap. But the pressure coming from behind. The only thing I can say is that the Ferraris in general appear not to be any much better off than the Porsche is at this stage. Both seem to be struggling, whether it's excessive tyre wear or just tyre wear.
Well, the lead gap is going up and up and up. It's like a skyscraper. It's going up so quickly. 9 seconds now. Eamon Murphy has dropped back. So just as we've been talking about the Ferraris struggling, so now the Porsches are struggling. So Murphy losing touch with the leader. Dietrich going backwards so quickly he's going to have flies on the back of his crash helmet, not the front. And he is almost now about to see the Ferrari come storming by because Benito is the next man to make a move against Jan-Marcel Dietrich, who, as Ben Constantdurance reported, has lost places to Petit and to Barber relatively easily, and now Bonito, who himself has been losing places, might just be able to buy one back before the end, and we're into the last 10 minutes here at a wet Nürburgring.
David, what I'm looking to see
is a huge challenge for the... John.
So I'm looking to see is Axel Petit in 4th place is within getting that final position, podium position, with just 9 minutes remaining. The pace that the Lexus has got is going to be very, very tight indeed.
Go on, Ben.
This is a real challenge for our sim drivers. They have done thousands of hours of practice on this platform. They know it inside out, but now to throw these conditions at them, relatively high, as John keeps saying, relatively high track and air temperature at 19 degrees for a wet day. I don't think that would have helped the tyres at all. And for sure, we have not got very good performance out of the rubber, let alone the track conditions. And the McLaren goes off in the background. No, that's just an issue. And so, lap times are now 3 or 4 seconds off what they were able to do at the start of the race. And that is such a struggle. Oh, that's not the way to do it.
Well, that's Josh Martin, who is 26th. He's doing good pace, but he's 2 laps down after earlier dramas. So the Team Parker Racing liveried Bentley up towards the timing line. This is David Tonitza, who is 3rd for the FDA Hublot Esports team.
But David,
yes,
look how close Petit is closed. He's taken almost 2 seconds out on the last lap. So he is now within 2.2 seconds. You can see the Lexus just coming into camera shot. There it is. There's the Ferrari. Tonitza in 3rd place probably will lose that with 7.5 minutes of this race going. I mean, nobody could have thought the way that some of these cars, the mid-front engine cars, would come alive, whether it's because they are looking after their rubber, their Pirelli wet weather tires better than the mid-engine, the Ferraris, the Porsches, the others. Something I don't understand. Maybe we'll hear in some of the post-race interviews. But right now, Tonitza needs to be thinking about, can I hang on? And look at Barber. He's also at the races. So it could be that Tonitza could end up back in 5th place before this race is finished.
Go back almost an hour. You were suggesting, and we agreed, that Tonitza wasn't that fussed about winning the race. He was happy to be 2nd and bank the points, get the championship lead. Right now, he is fighting to survive on the podium, isn't he? Because, as you rightly say, it could be 5th. By the end of this. The only consolation is that other championship rivals like Patrick Selva have fallen back to 8th. Jack Keithley is absolutely flying as well. He's up to 7th, and that could be the top 6, might even be better by the end of the race. Let's wait and see. But look, further up the road now, Tonitza is under attack from Axel Petit. There they go. Here is the Lexus making its move. You look at the BMW, but the Lexus goes by easy peasy up to the chicane.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you call him? Tonitza just simply said, I don't have any more in the tank. I'm not going to even chat. But now Barber, in the space of 2 corners, is right on the rear wing of the Ferrari as well. And look, comes up the inside. He's got more bike mid-corner, got more traction off the corner. So Lexus, BMW cleared the Ferrari in the space again of 2 corners.
So it's Aston Martin ahead of Porsche, ahead of Lexus, ahead of BMW, ahead of Ferrari. But no question, Ben, Tonitza is fading.
And let's consider also that this is an open setup race, meaning that all the drivers are able to change the setup of the car and try and maximize the car. So they may have done, a 15-minute run and be very happy with their wet setup, knowing that throughout the whole week they've had these tests in the wet. So it gave them a good idea that they were going to have a wet race. They would have been playing with a setup, but setup in 15 minutes, as John will be able to testify, is not the same as set up for a full hour race. And I think some of these guys have gone, yep, that car feels good over 15 minutes, we're all okay. Maybe the BMW has been set up for a full hour to look after the tyres and to get it to the end. And that's where we're seeing such huge differentiations in pace at the end of this race.
Well, of course, one of the things that happens over the course of the race is not just the tyre itself, but of course the weight of the fuel on board, it reduces. So the car has got a dynamic change taking place every lap. As we look again further down the field, this is rounding out the top 10. The Aston Martin struggling to hold off Frankie in the Bentley in 11th, at 0.3 of a second, the gap when they came across the first sector.
So this is for the last championship point, isn't it? Vetnieski ahead of Andre Franca, and contact between the two because it was the Aston that made a mess of turn 8. Through goes the Bentley. Andre Franca gains 1 spot then. Look at the lead gap, 15 seconds it's shot up to now. As Eamon Murphy is another driver really on damage limitation, just trying to get to the end as he struggles for traction, struggles with his setup and his tyre choice here.
Yeah, he's got Axel Petit, 10.5 seconds behind. It's a big ask to take that amount of time out with only 4.5 minutes of the race remaining. So any podium position will be a very happy day for all top 3. And Cecilia, who has pulled away, 16.5 seconds. I mean, it's just been monstrous.
Yes. But the way that Petit has been going and his pace relative to the Porsches, expect the gap to come down. That's Petit ahead of us. We're riding in the BMW with Ufuk Baba. This is turn 2 coming through the Mercedes arena. The gap's wide to touch there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see actually whether Petit, who's got his eyes focused on second place, hasn't really kept an eye on his mirror, because Baba, right now in the BMW, appears to be the quickest car on the circuit.
And further down, Adam Pitches comes over the line with Tobias Pfeffer, 13th behind him. Pfeffer, I think, was the spinner we had on the first lap from memory, so he's not really been able to fight back in the way that others have. Adam Pitches now upholding HWA Race Lab honour. Andre Franca has got himself onto the back of Patrick Selva. This could be a significant pass because it could push Selva down to 10th and give him only 1 point for his hour's work. He goes defensive, John, doesn't he?
Yeah, that was a legitimate move because he was ahead and he's entitled to take the line on the entry into that downhill Valvoline curve. But it meant that you've got to get out of the throttle, otherwise, well, there we see Franca suddenly, he's out of the throttle big time.
So that was a sideways Selva, came across the front of Franca, contact between the two. That's going to promote this battle potentially. Pitches versus Pfeffer. So contact as they went down the hill, but Franca is ahead. Let's see what damage that's done to either of those cars. It's getting ever darker, ever gloomier as the headlights are reflected off the road. Again, proper simulation of what the Nürburgring is like.
I thought it was my eyes.
David, well, talking of eyes, when you're in the real world, your eyes will adjust to the amount of light it allows in to potentially give you almost the ability to see more than we see on television pictures. But that doesn't happen in the simulation world. The simulator just gives you the amount of visibility that you get, and so your eyes can't quite adjust in the same way. So almost in a way, night driving in simulation is harder than it is in the real world in terms of visibility, and especially with wet conditions as well. Can
you not turn the lights out in your room when you're doing the sim and assume it's nighttime then? Or draw the curtain?
A lot of people will.
Draw the curtain.
Yeah, a lot of people will.
Yep.
There are all these extra elements though, Ben, that certainly I had never considered. It's fascinating not only watching individual races, but learning about what to me, and I suspect to John as well, is a whole new world. Every week we learn a little bit more. Right now, Adam Pitches is learning all about how to defend from Tobias Pfeffer, and then also here, look, as they come over the timing line, Alberto Garcia is in the mix of the Bentley, but look what's happened further up the road. Patrick Selva, championship leader, is 11th. He is out of the points.
And David, this is the last lap.
We've got less than a lap time left in the race. Now, a minute and 13 on the clock. Cecilia is a long way up the road. I just wonder whether he might be able to squeeze one more out of it. Ben might be able to find Cecilia's location on the track for us, just to confirm that as this battle paddles its way through. What about Jack Keithley? He's on the back of Tonitza for 5th place. So the man that was on pole, David Tonitza, he's a sitting duck, isn't he? Jack Keithley here, the Williams eSports driver, is about to make a move. I mean, it's dark and gloomy, but he tries to go one way. The Ferrari's in the way, but that Bentley, surely it's going to go through, John.
Yeah, I mean, again, I hate to repeat myself, but a mid-engine, front-engine GT car just dominating what we've seen here in a wet evening at Nürburgring. Gets up alongside, not quite ahead, but he may well, if he can pull enough, half a car length, he's done it. He's got ahead of Tonitza. He's getting to the chicane cleanly. It's a good pass by Keithley, and he will be delighted with that 5th place for him.
Fantastic drive this by Jack Keithley, isn't it? As the race leader is on to the last lap now. Then he just squeezed one more out of it. So Cecilia goes through. Ben, Jack Keithley, another sim racing expert. Really impressive drive by him.
Yeah, I'm really, really impressed with what he's managed to do on not his home platform, if you like. I've said it a few times already, but he's not used to this. We may see still a change for our podium because that BMW of Barbar is still pushing on, and he's right on the tail of Petit. Eamon Murphy had a very, very slow lap as well, but I don't think there'll be a change there.
Well, Petit was 10 seconds behind Murphy. He's only 4 seconds behind him, so he is getting closer. I don't think he's going to get past. But what about this man? We've hardly seen him, but Jesus Cecilia has had a mighty impressive race, John.
Wheel perfect. Absolutely all you could ask for a driver in the most challenging conditions. Started wet in daylight, finishing wet in darkness, and, you know, just threading your way around a racetrack. And it's never pleasant, believe me, in either real or in simulation, to drive in a wet track that's also getting darker by the lap.
Well, it is round 3 of the SRO Esport GT Series here from the Nürburgring, and it is going to be another driver, another brand that scores victory, because in the wet, in the gloom, in the cold conditions, and at virtually 10 past 8 local time, Jesus Cecilia then in the Aston Martin. He's going to come through as the winner. The AAA esports driver accelerates up towards the line. Jesus Cecilia it is who wins here at the Nürburgring. Second across the timing line should be Eamon Murphy in the Porsche, the man that led early on. Third will be Axel Petit, or will it, because Ufuk Baba is not that far behind him. There is Petit coming into the last corner. You can see how close he is to the second place Porsche, though. Eamon Murphy is going to hang on in there, but only just. That for fourth is the best we've seen all season of Ufuk Baba in the BMW. He powers his way now up over the timing line. The M6 improving on 27th at Spa, which was his previous best result. He finishes behind Axel Petit, who was 23rd at Silverstone as his best. Fifth, Jack Keithley, great drive. David Tonitza, the man from Pole, struggles home sixth. Jan-Marcel Dietrich, we just saw a moment ago, he will be seventh. Then it's going to be the man that started, I think I'm right in saying last of all. Yes, David Planiol, eighth from last on the grid. How about that? Apologies, we didn't really pick him up during the race, but 45th to 8th. Ninth is Andre Franke, and for 10th place, it should be Kvetniewski, and this is 11th, Patrick Selva, keeping Pfeffer and Garcia at bay. So they come to the checkered flag. So Patrick Selva ran 7th briefly. He ends up in 11th place, therefore no points to Patrick Selva. It is a win for Jesus Cecilia. And again, just to make the point about David Planiol, he started 45th after qualifying, absolutely flat last in his Lexus. And there's another car that came good as the race wore on, and David Planiol taking 8th position.
And David, just one thing I think would be interesting for seeing these results. If I was Balba, I would be the happiest man here tonight. Do you know why?
Go on.
Because when you go to Barcelona, that car will not be carrying any ballast.
Indeed.
Aston Martin, Porsche, Lexus, all will be carrying ballast. And I think I've done a good day's work. I've finished this race, picked up points, but I can go to Barcelona and I've got a car that will be starting at the regulation weight.
Fair point. Andre Franke is going to be given a drive-through post-race of 30 seconds, so that's going to drop him away from what was 8th place, puts David Planiol then further up the order, 45th to 8th, David Planiol. That's some drive. But Jesus Cecilia, very impressive job indeed. And Ben, a winning margin of 25.5 seconds. He wasn't hanging about, was he?
All down to the work that they will have done over the week, trying to maximise the setup of the car and get it to work as best as possible. So impressive. And just a shame that Murphy faded in his Porsche by the end, because I really felt like he was the star of the early running, and he really did have everything going for him, but perhaps not a car that lasted a full hour.
Well, Jack, we've been saying for previous races we'd quite like to have some wet conditions and to see how that would affect things. We've just had the answer, because that was a very lively hour, not only in terms of racing, but also in terms of discussion and also in terms of the result changing all the way through. So I think the wet element of that race was certainly worth having.
Yeah, it was really entertaining, wasn't it? And it was especially, as you say, seeing the gaps change throughout the race, because, you know, the Cecilia Eamon Murphy battle was great, and it looked as though it was going to last forever, pretty much. But the longer the race went on, the more Sicilia just dominated.
And again, what we found are drivers with such differing results. So, when we get around to looking at points after this, it'll be very different indeed, because you've had drivers, again, with a good and a bad day. If you can be consistent over these 5 rounds, that's all important. But David Tonitza, as an example, cut and paste that Jordan Pepper conversation. That was his race, we thought, and he ends up way, way down relative to what we anticipated, because that car just did not suit the wet as the race wore on.
But the thing for David Tonitza is that he has scored points, and he has scored points in each of the races so far. Not hugely impressive points. I don't think he's won a race, has he? Definitely not. In fact, has he even had a podium this season, David?
Tonitza has had a 3rd at Silverstone, yes, and then 7th at Spa. So, yeah.
So, and he is now at the top of the championship on 29 points, 4 points clear of Cecilia, Selva and Capoccia, who all have 25 points to their name, but nothing more than that. So Tonitza's consistency sees him go to the top of the championship standings. And everybody else who got a podium today, Eamon Murphy and Axel Pettit, are also up there now in the sort of top 5, top 10, within 11 points of the championship leader, Jesus Cecilia. So, David Tonitza. So really entertaining race in the wet. Watty, were you surprised how much difference the wet weather made in terms of it being a game and everything?
I was very impressed. I think the wet weather race was absolutely sensational. What I was enjoying was this difference between the performance at the start of the race, mid-race, and then the closing laps, between the traditional racing car layouts. I know this is all a bit sort of geeky stuff, but for some reason, the mid-engine cars, the Ferrari, the McLarens, the Porsche with the engine out the back, they just faded as the race went on. And it was the old school design, Aston Martin, Lexus, BMW, Bentley, that came to the fore. And I'm not quite entirely sure. Maybe it is just the manner in which those cars work their wet weather tires more sensitively than the more aggressive mid-engine car layout. But what is for sure is I was impressed with the BMW with Baba, but Cecilia and the Aston Martin, he was off and gone. And I tell you what, even with a ballast, I don't know how many pounds or kilos that car will carry, but that car will likewise in Barcelona be a major challenge. It's all about now. You've just got to finish in the points. It's not magic, simple, just finish in the points.
Well, let's speak to a man who did finish in the points and is now at the top of the championship, David Tonitza. David, thank you very much for joining us. How was that race for you? Because you were slipping back, but you still scored points, which I guess is the most important thing.
Yeah, hi everyone, first of all. I struggled a lot in the middle of the race and at the end. At the start of the race, I was keeping up the pace from the Porsche in front of me. And then I struggled a lot with the tires. I was losing the car in every corner. So I think P6 is a strong result. And also I am in P1 in the leaderboard. So I should be happy. But starting from pole position, I expected something better, maybe.
Were you surprised that you struggled? Because qualifying was also a bit wet as well. So were you surprised that you couldn't keep the car on the track? Have you done much wet running in general?
Yeah, I knew that my car would have a lot of problems at the end of the race, but I didn't know that the other cars could go really fast. So I was really impressed today.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us, David, and congratulations on your championship lead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you. We've also got Jack Keithley in the house, one of the drivers of the day, I think, today. Jack, we'll start off. You had a drive-through penalty earlier on, but then carved back up the order for a very strong 5th place finish.
Yeah, I don't know what I got the penalty for, because as we approached the green flag, I had things on my screen saying where I should place my car, how fast I should go, and I was doing everything in line. And I suddenly just got a drive through out. I don't know what I done wrong. No clue. So obviously I was absolutely annoyed at the time. But wow. I mean, I don't know how I had that grip and that speed throughout the entire race. I cannot tell you. That was an absolutely mega drive. And you know, Jack is used to watch me race a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. David, anything to ask Jack?
Only just to point out how impressive it was. And Jack's already said he doesn't know the answer as to why the pace was there, but it really was hugely impressive. But Jack, would you prefer more wet races? Because we enjoyed watching it. Was the wet weather something you think that helped you and or the car?
You know what? Indeed. I was thinking I was Michael Schumacher in a Ferrari in Barcelona. That was incredible. The Williams Bentley was absolutely phenomenal today. Absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, great. Well, congratulations, Jack, and see you next week in a wet or in a couple of weeks in a wet Barcelona, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. See you guys.
See ya. So there we go. There is Jack Keithley and championship leader David Tonitzer speaking about that race. And it's not. Watty, have you had drives like that where you at the end you're like, I don't know how I was so much quicker than everyone else?
It happens from time to time. I mean, it's not the norm. There are circumstances in your career where you can start in a very lowly position and drive through to the front of the field. And I mean, it's a bit of a novelty in some respects, but at the end of the day, it's all about points. And it doesn't say if you win a race because you started so far back, oh yeah, he started back in the 10th row of the grid, but he drove through the field. All it says is John Watson won the race. He got 25 points. And that's frankly all a racing driver cares about.
Unless I guess you're the record holder for having won a Grand Prix from the furthest back on the grid. I guess that goes in the record books, doesn't it?
I didn't hear that. Say it again, Jack. Let's be clear about this, Jack. Say it again.
We have with us the record holder for the furthest back on the grid to a race victory. There we go. Not very good qualifier. Not very good qualifier.
Well, not entirely, but never going to be broken, I can assure you, unless they get more than 22 cars on the grid.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as we bring the show to a close, then we've got Ben Barnicoat at the top of the Pro Championship. David Tonitzer now at the top of the Silver Championship. Adders, what are you looking for next time in Barcelona? Is the weather? I mean, the weather's going to be one of the big questions, I suppose.
It is, and I think also, Jack, how people and how the different marques of the brands cope with the extra ballast that they will have accrued after this race. Also, whether people can keep out of trouble, whether they can be consistent, because as we've been saying, you've just got to score points. It's a short, sharp championship, and we've got so many almost snakes and ladders performances here with people having a good day and a bad day, sliding up and down the order. Keep out of trouble, bank points, but I've got to say, perhaps more than anything, I'm looking forward to 2 more good races, because what I've enjoyed about this is coming into a new world of sim racing, seeing fabulous graphics, fabulous racing, fabulous simulation, and I'm really enjoying being in this very different environment. Each time out, I think everything gets better, and I can appreciate it even more. I'm looking forward to more of the same from Barcelona.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Constanduris, final words from you. For me, I'm thinking that the pro drivers now are kind of starting to figure out exactly how much they need to do going into a race to be prepared. Maybe the opening race at Monza or the first round of the championship at Silverstone, they thought, I'll do a couple of hours and then we're done. They're sort of learning more and more what they need to be doing to get at the front, and it's just getting more and more competitive.
I'm so glad we've converted the old boys, Jack, to the world of sim racing. How good is that? To hear David Addison be excited about a sim race is so cool. And totally agree with you. The pros are really impressing me to see their level. I think not just the drivers themselves, but the manufacturers knowing how much they need to support their drivers to get the setups correct, to make sure the cars feel good. And so it's nice to see that progress every single race, everyone just getting better and better and better.
Watty, final thoughts?
Sorry, Jacko.
You get
6 because the rain stopped here. Just remind me of the question.
Your final thoughts.
I'm looking forward to Barcelona, and whether it's wet, dry, snow, whatever, what I've seen in these 3 races that we've been broadcasting on is really good motor racing. Seeing overtaking, sometimes you get the odd wheel drops off and all the usual messing around, but I can't wait for Barcelona, and I hope it will be a race that I'll remember, because there actually will be overtaking on the Barcelona Grand Prix circuit, which is a bit of a rarity in most forms of motorsport these days.
Absolutely. So that'll be the next race in 2 weeks' time in Barcelona, and then it'll be followed by the final round of the championship, which will be down to a public vote. So we'll let you know how to get involved in that in Barcelona in a couple of weeks. But for now, from David Addison, from Ben Constanduros, from John Watson, the whole team in Italy and at SRO, thank you very much for joining us for round 3 of the SRO Esport GT Series. Ben Barnicoat takes the win in the Pro Cup and now leads the championship. Jesus Cecilia winning in the silver class, and David Tonitza moving to the top of the standings with just 2 to go. Round 4 will be in Barcelona in 2 weeks' time, and we'll see you then.